Can't wait to go home. I'm like, when I look in there, I'm like, they stole my idea, Laura. Because remember we talked about having coffee, nice wine bar sitting there.
Yeah, you're right. You did. You did.
I don't know if they're going to have wine or anything. Probably not. But
I think they should have brought wine into the bookstore. That would have been.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I talked to her about having a coffee place. I mean, right there by Riva, you got that little plaza.
Oh.
And she even said that she thought about it like a year ago to have something. But then she has, the Board of Health, and you have to go through you have to have bathrooms and everything, so. But,
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe we should get going?
Why not?
All right. Okay, it's a little past our starting time of 7:30 here. Let me call the meeting to order here, and I guess the first order of business is approving the agenda for the meeting.
I move that we accept the agenda for Thursday, August 28th, 2014.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, first item on the list is bylaw discussion about increasing the height limit for home elevations.
And I'm hoping you can explain this, because I've read this 20 times and I still can't quite figure it out.
Well, I
So
drew
we'll turn
a
over to
little
Laura.
diagram, so I hope that helps. It's,
Thank you.
you see.
All right, pictures will help.
Oh, I didn't see the nicely drawn one. I just saw the picture.
So this is an actual house
Three-dimensional.
in Scituate, which is being elevated right now. And now it looks pretty much like this, and before it looked like, you can kind of see from the field card, it looked like that.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to pass that down.
Where, can you say where it's located? Is it?
It's on Turner Road.
Okay.
And the problem is when you have your house, you have your 35-foot limit to the average between the peak and the eaves.
Oh, okay.
And that's, I've put some little fine lines here. The top one is at the ridge. Then the next one is supposed to be the average of the ridge and the eave. And so you've got 40 feet for one, you've got 35 feet for the other one. And then when you start to lift the house, all of those go out of whack. The problem is that people don't really have a choice about how high they elevate. They have to elevate so their first floor is above the base flood elevation if they're in an A zone, which is, kind of your generic flood zone. And if they're in the V zone where they get the waves of over 3 feet and the real active, storm flow, then it has to be the lowest structural member of the house, and that has to be 2 feet above the base flood elevation. And I guess actually the first one has to be 1 foot above because conservation has a regulation on that. So either way, they have to all of a sudden be lifted up, and then the height goes out of whack. So what Marshfield did, and this is modeled on what Marshfield did, because it seemed to make sense, was instead of using the ground as where they start the measurement, they use the base flood elevation as where they start the measurement. So you're losing a couple of feet from that 35 foot and 40 because you're already starting a foot above or 2 feet above. The most highest flood elevations are mostly along Turner Road and Oceanside Drive. To some extent, if the new maps go through, which probably someday they will, Surfside, Glades Road, those are the areas that have the highest base flood elevation on the FEMA maps. So, bless you. The ground is already above sea level, so when they say, okay, there's a base flood elevation of 19 feet, it sounds really, really high, like you're going to be 19 feet in the air, but that's actually only 11 feet above where your ground is. So...
Because it's measured off of sea level.
Because it's measured off of sea level.
Okay.
So you have, basically, you're putting the whole height, like 9 or 10 feet up from where it is now, and that's what you're doing. So you shouldn't really go, I came up here up over 51 feet. Everything is going to be higher, but there don't seem to be too many alternatives to that. Now, to control people tearing their house down, creating some, huge mansion and elevating it and wind up with something that's, say 60 feet high, for that reason, for kind of the aesthetic reason, and also the kind of more practical reason of not having more people living in the floodplain, more people that need to be rescued, et cetera, et cetera. Some town officials feel like we really shouldn't be allowing a lot of expansion in the floodplain anyway. Whether we should or not, anyway, I think there are some real downsides to allowing it. So the way this is written, at least as a starting point, is that you could do this and you could have this extra allowance, but not if you were going to redo your house and either add height to it or add living space to it, so you were really expanding it out. If you did that, then you got to fit, somehow fit in that height limit that's there now.
Where does it say that in the bold?
Okay, in the bold, it says, okay.
Well, I see it says no increase in
with no
habitable.
increase in habitable area.
But as you said, what's to stop someone from tearing down their house, rebuilding a gigantic mansion, as you just said, waiting a year, and then elevating it? Because that's no increase in the habitable area.
Well,
Well,
because
a couple of things actually would prevent that. Most of these properties are non-conforming
Right.
in terms of lot size and setbacks and all that. So it becomes difficult, not impossible, but difficult to enlarge them. I think it's a ZBA special permit to add, you can add 20%, the way it's written now.
Yeah, I believe so.
You can increase the floor area by 20%.
Is that right? You gonna tell us?
You need to have a special permit if you're increasing by 20%.
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
But it's
So-
more than.
So you can increase 15% without a special permit, or anything under 20?
I'm Edward Tibbetson.
Hi, Ed.
By on zoning board. If, as Bob says, most of the non-conforming lots that they come before is because the lot size is too small. It may also be setbacks and other factors. But basically, we'd have to review almost any significant change. I think the other aspect, Bob, would be if you're increasing the size of if you're expanding the size of the property or doing renovations that exceed 25% of the value of the property.
It's actually 50%, I think,
50%,
yeah.
But that would have to bring it into compliance.
Right, and it's 50% of just the value of the structure, not the land.
So
It's pretty easy
do that
to trigger that,
almost
yeah.
any house.
Right,
Right. Sidewalls could be 50% of that.
right.
Because they're so close together down there. So I think you'd end up, there'd be a review.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah,
So as soon as you really start to do much anything to the house, you have to elevate it per the building code.
Okay.
but that kind of fight, there's some real interesting wrinkles in this, Laura, and I don't know, we can
There's always
thrash them all out tonight. But if I'm going to expand my house and I'm going to spend more than the 50%, I'm going to be forced to elevate it under the current regulations.
Yeah.
On the other hand, this is at least tending to indicate that I can't elevate it and expand it at the same time. I can only elevate it if I don't expand it.
Well, you can do everything that you can do now. I mean, this doesn't take away anything that you can do now.
Okay,
So right now, a lot of locations, you can elevate and you may not be over that 40-foot to the ridge.
right, I would hope that's
And
true.
in that case, you won't need this,
Yeah.
so you won't have to worry about habitable space, and you can
Yeah.
just make it whatever.
Yep,
So this is really for the places where you have to elevate high.
And even if you do have to elevate high, if it's a new build, it seems like there ought to not be allowed, if it's a raise and reconstruct or a new build, which is kind of unlikely, but you shouldn't be able to take that base flood elevation and go up 40 feet from there if you're doing a raise and reconstruct in a new build, or a new build.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, in any existing house, you can't ask people to cut the roof off or cut their third floor off at the same time asking them or incentivizing them to elevate. Elevating is considered to be a good move. We want to get people to do that. But you can't at the same time say, this is going to be the effect on your property. But that's for an existing house. There ought to perhaps be something like this, and then another piece of this that will speak to a raise and reconstruct situation or a new build situation if there were such.
Yeah, I think that's a gray area, and there is kind of a general feeling that you don't really want to encourage a lot of new development along the coast, because we're eventually going to have to either draw back or do something because of sea level rise and all the flood damage that we have, and whether we should be really incentivizing people to build along the coast, I think is a question that needs to be looked at.
Yep.
So this doesn't take away anything that people have now in terms of the houses on, say, Lighthouse Point, Cedar Point, where they expanded quite a bit. They went up. They seem to be below the 40 feet somehow. They may be like touching it, but they're not over it.
Yep.
And they have some pretty good sized houses there. I'm thinking Lighthouse Road in particular. And some of the ones on Turner, they're those ones that they seem to be about, I don't know, they're a good 2.5 stories. They have like a little peak that goes in one direction.
Mm-hmm.
Those look pretty tall.
Yeah.
Presumably those aren't going to be having a problem. A couple of those got elevation grants, so presumably they're not going to have a problem when they, bring their plans in.
I don't think you could legislate in any way against an existing house being elevated.
Well, yeah, except we kind of do, so that's kind of why we're doing this, really.
Under the present situation, there'd be some question about whether you'd be in compliance once you elevated.
Yeah, if you're
I hear
going to be
that.
over that 40 feet.
I hear that.
Whereas this is allowing that little bit of,
In that
This is
particular set
really
of
opening the door
circumstances.
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
okay.
So we definitely do need
Elevating
something
Existing structure,
like this.
no increase in habitable area. That's kind of the limitation of this,
Yeah,
right?
just take what you have, if you want to rearrange it, that's fine, but don't pump it up and go through that 40 foot. If you want to pump it up, fine, but just pump it up like low to medium instead of medium to high.
What does happen, and like I say, I don't think we can cover every situation here, but it's going to take some study, and unfortunately, it's probably going to be, in my mind, complicated enough so that it'll be difficult to have everybody understand it to the point of where they'll be comfortable voting for it at town meeting. That's
One of you will do a
that's a huge
fabulous
hurdle.
job explaining it.
Yeah, right.
So this has to, obviously, since it's a change in the bylaw, it has to be voted at town meeting?
Yeah.
Right. So I have a home that I want to expand. It's on grade right now, or a couple of feet above, but it's in a flood zone. Or say it's even not, because there's some areas that are in an X zone right now that are going to be in a flood zone if the new mapping, goes into place. So I do my expansion. I'm still within the bylaw regulations now. I've got enough land. I'm not trespassing on my setbacks. I'm under 40 feet. And then I come back and now I want to elevate that expanded building, to a year from now, or, no, it's even more interesting than that. Once I've spent the money, or once I've done that expansion or planned it, and it's over 50% of the assessed value of the original dwelling, now I have to elevate it.
Yeah. Well, you have to think it through beforehand.
Right, but now I'm elevating an expanded structure.
You mean if you're in a Zone X now?
Even if I'm not, let's say I'm in any zone. You know, the
Well,
properties in
yeah.
Surfside are in a flood zone, some of them are enormous.
They must be under 40 feet. I mean, I'm assuming.
They won't be if they elevate to be under base flood, to be, well, I'm sorry, I'm mixing this up too much. I guess I feel like I need to sit down and write it out. I think it's right that you want to limit expansion along the shore as much as possible, and one way to do it is to say you're encouraged to elevate for one set of reasons, but you're prohibited from expanding for a different set of reasons. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the way it works out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all things to all people by any means. I mean, real estate people are probably not going to be thrilled about this.
No, but there'll be other people who'll find ways around this. I'm less worried about that aspect than I am worried about people being able to find ways to circumvent, you know, whatever's the regulation.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of like a occupational hazard of town government.
Yep,
But at the same time, if you don't do anything, then everyone just kind of goes through, so.
absolutely.
So the big key
Well, that's not
thing.
quite true. If you don't do anything, and people who want to raise their house to get out of the floodplain are actually going to be in violation.
Yeah, that's true too, yeah.
Well,
I
now,
mean, it
without this
almost
language.
seems
Without
like,
this language, yeah.
Right.
it almost seems like something like this should be understood, or it should be in state law, or this shouldn't be necessary. I mean, it kind of seems like, I don't know, like we're doing something that should be just automatic, but it's not automatic,
Yeah.
so we're doing it.
For an existing building, it needs to be. There's no language in the FEMA grant that says, you know, you can't do this if it places you in violation of local regulations.
Oh, well, they expect the town to enforce the local regulations, so, but that's the town's job and not FEMA's job.
Right.
FEMA's basically saying you got to get out of the flood zone, right? And they're not addressing the height of the house once it's out of the zone, right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
They don't see that as their job.
right.
Yeah, okay.
So
And actually, you're not supposed to change the footprint or change anything to do with the house when you get a FEMA grant. You
Okay.
just have to elevate the house exactly as it is.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
So just so I'm 100% crystal clear, the language in this paragraph is doing just two things, with the way I understand it. Number one, it's saying you can't change the habitable area by any factor. And then it's also allowing you to adhere to our regulations, because without it, as Steve said, you'd be out of it if you lifted it up. So it's
resetting the
resetting
baseline.
the
It's
baseline.
resetting the
So
baseline.
those are the two things it's doing, correct?
Yeah, it's resetting the baseline under that condition that, you know, you don't increase the habitable area.
Okay.
If you increase the habitable area, your baseline is back where you started.
Oh.
What happens if you do all that, elevate it, come back a year later and decide to tear the house down? Do you start from the base flood elevation?
Well, that's a good question.
That might be the more likely approach for most people.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I mean, this says in connection with elevating, yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, because you're probably going to have a different habitable area. Maybe it means that, maybe you can just rebuild what's there. I'm not sure what we would do with that.
But I know you'd mentioned about that there were several people on in town government that would like to sort of not incentivize building along the coast, which I also
Yeah.
completely agree with. But this does nothing really for that one way or another, right? There's no,
Well, I disagree. No, I think it does do something for that.
You think it
because
does limit?
It doesn't allow you to create a large house where you just had a small house and get this benefit of having the new height limit.
oh, okay.
Unless you raised it first, as I
see.
said, unless you elevated it first, and then decided you were going to tear it down, build a new house on the existing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we need to address that somehow. What happens if your house gets knocked off its foundation, can you?
No, I think it's more likely that somebody raises it and then comes back in to say, I want to reconstruct this house now. I want to expand
Yeah,
it, I want to modify it.
I mean, the cost of elevating is high. I mean, it's upward of, 100,000. So we don't see a lot of people doing that because it's so expensive to do it in the first place that I think they're just going to kind of wait until that house wears out.
Falls down.
Yeah.
Ed?
May I, as having to deal with these, the language that will be presented, or the challenge you have is, I'm thinking of Marshfield. Haddad's, the restaurant, was a big example of how they did everything they could to be within the FEMA maps, and not to change the FEMA maps. You could have a situation where someone comes in today, builds a home, completely within all of the parameters of the elevations and our zoning bylaws, everything. And then next year, in order to be out of the floodplain, they want to raise it 2 feet. And all of a sudden, they're now out of, they're above the height restriction. So I appreciate that this is a challenge. The problem, I think, is we also have houses that are in tough condition, that you can't make them tear them down, and we don't want people to lose their habitable properties. But they want to invest some money. They want to improve the property, and this comes before ZBA all the time. But it's before ZBA. We're in a position at that point to encourage them to make it more conforming. Height would be one of those things we could encourage them to make it more conforming. If they have a property that is currently close to the height restriction, they want to raise it up 6 feet, that's going to change the height restriction, make it non-conforming at that component. In the ZBA hearing, we would consider if they had an option to take part of the roof up, change it to a mansard roof, do something. And we have to remember that a lot of these height restriction things are not so much in order to limit development, they're safety issues. I mean, we have fire safety. We don't want to have buildings too high for the fire to access. Properties, setbacks are intended, especially along the congested areas that we're talking about, Rebecca, Lighthouse, Turner. We don't want properties so close to each other that emergency vehicles can't get between. There are already increased building codes associated with structures that are closer than 5 feet to the lot lines for fire retardancy, etc. So I think what Marshfield was trying to do here, and I think what you're recognizing is the problem, is in the process of elevating, they may violate this the height restriction. Having a mechanism built into the bylaw that allows them to elevate without going through a full ZBA hearing is completely appropriate. But if they're going to do any kind of a raise and reconstruct or significant renovations, they're going to have to go before ZBA anyway, and that's when they're going to have the hearing to talk about what they can do to become more conforming. In some cases, we've gotten them to take them to move the houses up back from the street so that more sight lines for cars can have drive out, garages, things like that. There's lots of things that can happen, and I can envision height being one of those things that becomes a bargaining chip. Look, you're raising it up, you're going to be out of the height restriction. What can you give us for it? Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. And we have encouraged people to minimize the size of properties unless we unless we say, no, we can't, unless we have a bylaw that says you can't expand beyond a certain percentage or size or whatever. But, we do look to make houses more conforming. We can't do anything about the lot size, but we can certainly talk about height in a case of raise and reconstruct on a property that has to be from the elevation, from base elevation.
I think that's a really good point, because that addresses some of what you all were talking about as far as if someone does want to raise and reconstruct, then how do all these things kick in?
Mhm.
And they probably kick in at the zoning board. One of the things that I was thinking about while, in relation to what Ed was talking about, is there probably should be some language in here that this just kicks in where the increase in the height above the current height limit is necessary to elevate the house. So you don't have people somehow playing with this in such a way that just so it's really understood, it's just where it's really absolutely necessary that they go up so high. That it's not done under, some other circumstance.
Yeah, but it would be easy to claim that any time the existing house, triggered that limit, simply because it costs money to make any modifications that would get you back inside the envelope. Maybe it's the 50%. If you're going besides the elevation cost, $150,000 or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
If above and beyond that cost, you're going to improve your house by 50% of its currently assessed value or greater, then I think you're into a special permit, and as you would be anyway, right? I mean, isn't that a ZBA issue at that point?
As long as you're increasing by the 50% of the value, that just triggers the elevation.
Oh, I see, okay. I mean,
if
perhaps
you're
that ought to be
putting in all new bathrooms, and you're really going to town with gutting the whole interior and remodeling it, putting new siding, you're going to be increasing above that 50%, maybe.
Yeah.
You would have to elevate it.
Okay, so, but what if we use that as the trigger for a ZBA special permit hearing, or some sort of ZBA
That's another
activity?
That's another whole ball of wax.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what I think it is, and I appreciate what Bob was saying earlier about it being complicated to sell to at town meeting. I'm thinking, you mentioned Surfside Road, for example. There are lots on Surfside Road that are conforming. Part of the land may be underwater now, but it's a conforming lot.
Oh, yeah.
And there are homes there that currently exceed the height restrictions because they predated our current bylaw.
Yep.
There could be a time when they have to be raised a bit in order to meet the floodplain.
Right.
So they're going to be in a challenge. They're on a conforming lot. They need to be raised. They're already non-conforming in the height. So you're telling me I can't continue to be non-conforming in the height because it just can see a lot of difficulty. I think you have to allow people to elevate without imposing height restriction, and that's really I think what you're trying to accomplish by this.
Yeah, exactly.
And simply to say that elevation changes as a result of FEMA flood elevations or whatever are maybe exempted by special permit from zoning. I mean, just throw it to zoning to review it. I think currently it would be the code enforcement officer's right. He just review it as a building permit, see if it meets the permit.
I think that this is trying to make it just a little bit easier because people wouldn't have to go to the zoning board. They wouldn't have to go to the planning board. They wouldn't have to go to the zoning board.
I understand. I do understand. But you could trigger it if it became any kind of a question.
Sure.
Now, maybe I'm being too nitpicky, but since you say increase in habitable area, should there be a language that says like no increase in the current height? Because I'm just thinking, like, let's say someone wants to like
Yeah.
expand, make a two-story living
Atrium
room,
or
atrium
something.
space that
Yeah.
doesn't actually increase the habitable area at all.
You know, we were talking about widows' walks earlier. Yeah, I think that was something we were already talking about, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's absolutely, I think that's an important part.
Okay. Where there's a way, someone will find a way around it.
Still remember seeing
The nature of the beast.
the house in Cohasset where they tore down the entire house except the front wall because it wasn't a complete raise, right? And
Oh.
built
Oh,
the
yeah.
house around it.
Oh, that happened on Surfside, too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We've had them, I think, where it's less than one wall.
right. It's just like one
Just the
corner,
door.
like one
Find the screw
one
in that
corner,
old washer.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
the mudroom or the foyer to the back door.
Okay, well, I've gotten, yeah.
Oh, I was
sorry.
saying, are you looking for us to have a vote on this tonight, or just
No, I
just
I really was
discussion?
just
Go
looking
for
for
it.
some ideas.
Okay.
I think I got some, and I'll go back and regroup and
Edit.
edit,
Sorry.
rework, and come back in probably not too long, because even though April seems like a long way away, it's not in that sort of town world.
It's just,
I'm back to the raise and reconstruct or new construction scenario and trying to make that, trying to have some regulation somehow that limits that condition a little more than just raising an existing house.
Well, to the raise and the well, okay, to the building the new house. If you're building a new house in the floodplain, almost always it's going to be in the floodplain and watershed protection district.
Right.
And you would need to show that the lot is not subject to flooding, and the zoning board would be the one to determine that.
Okay.
So,
So
again,
you-
like Ed was saying, they could use that as a bargaining chip to go for a smaller house.
So if you're even in an AE zone, you can't build because it's subject to flooding?
Just if it's in the floodplain and watershed protection district,
Oh, okay.
most of it is.
It's a different thing. Okay.
But I guess I was under the impression that what we were looking to do is provide a way for someone who just merely just wanted to elevate their house could be able to do that and extend the height, the current height restrictions.
Yeah, that's
That's
what
what this is
we're,
written about.
that's what we're
Yeah.
talking about. Why don't, I have a little
We were
diagram.
just playing what-if games.
Yeah.
Right, I'm thinking
We
of,
were trying to figure out the way it might get distorted.
But the
Exactly.
second part of that is the what if, it ends up, it's really zoning, it's CBA. They would be the ones who would make a determination.
they'd be the gatekeepers on the
Well,
what
well,
if?
this would be a little bit easier, so that instead of making somebody who's already spending $150,000 or, somewhere in that neighborhood to elevate their house, instead of making them spend another, however much on an attorney, their application fee, the time lag, they wouldn't have to do that. And that's what Marshfield is doing. They're not throwing it to the zoning board. They're just saying, if you have to elevate, we're going to waive the height for you,
As long as
basically.
you elevate the house as
Without-
is. essentially.
As is,
Touching
yeah.
the
As long as you
zoning
elevate
board.
that
As it
way.
is, you don't expand it and elaborate on it.
And the
You
height
just-
doesn't get any higher.
Right.
Yeah, the height doesn't get any
The current
higher.
height of the house.
Yeah, I think that's, to me, that's absolutely appropriate. What I worry about is somebody's going to take that and take advantage of it. And so should there be other language someplace that tries to block the guy that for whom money is no object, who just wants an enormous house, 12 feet in the air for view and also flood protection, and
And he's building from scratch.
and he's building from scratch, or he's doing a raise and reconstruct, and he's got
taking-
plenty of land, so there's no setback issues or anything like that. So if
But
he's
he's
up
not
on
simply
12,
raising existing house up,
okay, so,
right?
This
So-
kind of says
This-
that it doesn't apply to that. I mean,
Right.
it already says that.
okay,
So
But maybe
someone's
we
got to
need
read it, and
belts
they've
and
got to
suspenders
apply
there.
it, and they've got to say, no, you can't do that. I mean, this doesn't take that whole responsibility out of it.
all right, I don't,
Not-
mean-
not to-
I understand, I do get it, and that's fine, but somebody is going to come along and want to build a mansion on the coast 16 feet in the air. and claim they can go 40 feet above that 16-foot level.
Well, but people are always going to kind of creatively misunderstand what's in the zoning bylaw, but I think, part of what we try to do, and I'm sure you guys try to do, is you have to explain it to them that it just does not apply to their situation.
Maybe a
It
piece.
doesn't make our lives any easier to have this. I can agree with you there.
Yeah.
Just a thought here, just a piece of maybe what could create some of that confusion is we talk about determination of the height from the highest point of the roof, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We actually don't care. Right? If they're just elevating the house is going to be as high as it's going to be, as it currently is, plus however much they elevate it. There's no need to measure.
I'm thinking
Right.
maybe we could simplify this whole thing by just saying
Yeah.
that the existing height is
Right.
No additional.
grandfathered as long as there's no additional height.
Heights,
Right.
no additional
Um,
structures
Yeah.
like a widow's
And they have
walk
to
or.
maybe present a survey of the existing house showing the height or whatever. I mean, that might be something you just work out in the office, but,
And this regulation, the entire regulation applies only to existing houses whose
Simply need to be elevated.
whose envelope is not going to change.
Correct.
I mean, you can put new siding and windows and even bathrooms and stuff on the inside, but you're not going to change the envelope.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's kind of what we're trying to make easier is for the people that have to elevate their home. Oh, I have to go through this now. They're not looking, so, oh, great, I have an opportunity now to blow it out and put a third floor on it. They're just saying, help me get my house up out of the floodplain. I think that's, with all the houses that I see that this might apply to, I think that might be their first thought is, I just need to get this thing elevated.
Without having to go
Yeah.
to ZBA.
Yeah.
You're not going to change
Yeah.
a thing.
Yeah, but the guy that's gonna come in and just start writing checks about knocking it down and elevate it anyway, I think there's enough hurdles he's gonna have to jump to get that done. Whereas we can help the people that just, have to take grandma's house and raise it up 12 feet.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
I like it.
But I
Great.
think ultimately.
Write all that down.
Yeah, right.
Tick off.
Well,
Karen, do you have all this?
the theme behind it
Best I can.
is good. I should say.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
The
really,
intention of it, I think, is very good, that we're trying to do.
Well, that's what usually sells these things, is the intention of it,
Yeah.
and hopefully everything else follows along behind that. So we'll
Okay.
do some rewrite.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you, and I'm officially handing
Yes.
the gavel back to Chairman Limbacher here.
Who appreciates that, I guess. I apologize for being a few minutes late. I got tangled up in some paperwork that I just didn't seem to be able to clear out as fast as I should be. Were I the only one playing the game, then it wouldn't have been a problem. Anyway. So the next item on the agenda is at 8:30. What I'm going to suggest is that we do accounting and minutes,
Sounds good.
so that we can get closer to Bob's motion.
Now, that's not the goal. It's the experience.
but Brady's not even playing tonight, right? Who needs it?
Yeah, but I know what he can do.
Yeah, you're right. You're
What
right.
he can do.
You're right.
No score after the first quarter.
Oh, thank you.
Someone playing tonight?
It's a little league game.
Oh,
Maybe
No,
you
I'm
can,
kidding. It's the Patriots.
I was going to say baseball, maybe, I don't know. All right, that's not terrible. For accounting, I move that we pay $85 to the MAPD, the Massachusetts Association of Planning Directors, for the annual dues.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
So that's the only accounting.
Should have some minutes. I read minutes.
Yep, we do.
Just trying to do one thing at a time. So I move that we approve the Scituate Planning Board minutes for July 24th, 2014, as well as the Scituate Planning Board minutes for August 14th, 2014.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye. Actually, it was kind of interesting when you presented the other minutes from 1998 for the situation we're going to be discussing coming
Oh,
up. And there happened to be like accounting, and I was looking over the expenses. They were quite a bit less. It's in, for 19
Like the office supplies or the-
yeah, it was stuff like that. And it was
No,
all,
actually, the MAPT dues, I swear they were exactly the same in 1998.
oh, that's good.
But they were, I think
Yes.
they were.
It is.
Pardon?
25th of September?
That's,
It's a meeting day.
that's, yeah, the meeting next, yeah, that's the second one. September.
That's the one we got 50 Country Way out, right?
We have 50 Country Way, yes.
Someone missed that one. Be in town.
Is everybody else going to be there that night? Just so we have four,
What is it?
the 25th?
So,
Yep.
Yep.
Well, I can find out if they want to,
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know I wasn't going to be here.
if they want to change the date, of that.
Yeah, that's-
Sure. All for me. Thank you. I can't quite see the clock, but it looks to me like we've got about 20 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Are you going to be here on, is everyone going to be here on the 11th?
Thanks.
The first meeting in October?
Yes. I'm going to be back
this says October 9th.
Okay, October 9th?
Oh, really?
That's what it says. I'm not sure that, this is what you handed out quite a while ago, the
Right.
2014 schedule.
Yes, the 9th, right.
Would 10 minutes give me enough time for town planners report?
Town planners report, what's on the town planners report? Let's get the town planners report.
Okay.
We'll continue right through that.
We're not,
How about liaison reports?
I have nothing.
You can zip right through those too.
This isn't exactly a liaison report, but we had a meeting of folks who were concerned about the new FEMA regulations and where we stood in that process and all of that down at Pier 44. Was that post our last meeting? I don't recall whether,
yeah,
I
that was
spoke
on
about
the
that or not.
19th, I think.
The
So that was
19th?
after the
Okay.
planning board meeting.
Representatives from MEMA were there. One gentleman from the from the Marshfield Coalition. Several people, Pat, our conservation agent, Nancy, our coastal, what's the official title of Nancy?
Coastal resources.
Coastal Resource Officer. Myself, the police chief, the fire chief, public safety in general. Probably about 70 people in the audience. Good questions, good sort of input from everyone. I thought Mike Stewart was particularly convincing in terms of the risks to safety and rescue operations that, are posed in some of the flooding events, and it was just sort of an overall view of where all these agencies factor into response to disasters and preparation for disasters along those lines. So, excellent meeting. Several people came up to, mainly Pat, he was the master of ceremonies, afterwards and said, very informative, really appreciate this, have a much better understanding and kind of comprehensive overview picture of what the town is, A, going through, and B, doing about it. And so was well appreciated. So that's
What,
my
did they
report.
cable? Was it on cable or did it?
Was it on cable? Do you know?
I think
It was,
August 19th at the Harbor Community Center, the Harbor Community.
yeah, it was the Coastal Coalition, and no, I didn't think so. don't recall anybody there.
Maybe next year would be a good idea.
Yeah, no, it's a very informative meeting, because as I say, there's so many different points of view expressed, and very well expressed and very kind of knit together. So it gives a great kind of comprehensive picture of the situation, as well as we know it, of course, which is not completely.
15 sands, huh?
Can I mention a real quick thing?
Sure.
I got an email from Tricia and got a little bit involved with some people in Scituate Harbor who are trying to get the harbor designated as a Massachusetts cultural district.
Yeah, there was an article in the paper
Yeah.
that they'd gotten a
Oh, was there?
grant, but it wasn't about the harbor. It was just that there was, anyway.
Oh, grant money was available?
Yeah.
Well, I think they're trying to get a piece of that grant money, but they have a ways to go. It's a question of, what is the cultural character of Scituate Harbor? I mean, is it fishing? Is it, the end of the Irish Riviera? Is it, what is it exactly? So I think it'll be really interesting as they think about that and, try to kind of flesh that out. I was in Vineyard Haven on vacation, and Vineyard Haven is a cultural district. They've already got it, and they have little flags up that say, Vineyard Haven Cultural District. And there are lots of historic buildings and, things that are not exactly like Scituate Harbor, but a little bit like Scituate Harbor. So maybe we could get, some of that.
What does the cultural district designation bring with it?
Besides these, the little flags, and I think some tools for marketing, for marketing Scituate Harbor as a place to come to that's, got these particular qualities and character and is of interest to people, for those reasons, and that make it different from other
State would
places.
market us, or?
I think the marketing it's the Mass Cultural Council. So it's kind of a combination of arts and economic development
But
and marketing.
the article today, I don't know if anyone saw it, it was a little bit confusing because they talked about the Mass Cultural Council, that there was this money, but they didn't mention Scituate Harbor. It was just that sort of the arts, Scituate Arts Council. I mean, it was kind of tied in somehow there, and
Okay,
it was a little bit
I'll have to read
confusing.
it,
So that's
'cause
what.
maybe it'll help me understand
Yeah.
how all these different players are
Okay.
connected. Because it's really just kind of the germ of an idea. There's a draft application, but there are a lot more, lines that have to be filled in and numbers that have to be provided than there are like answers in the blanks. So,
So the inference is that Trish would be supportive of something like that?
yeah, I think she will be.
Okay. I had an item that, I guess it's old business. We've got an opening for an associate member. And best of my knowledge, we've not received any applications to that.
That's right.
Would it make sense to come back up and instead of trying to fill something up now between now and November, to wait and put it on the ballot, November?
In November? Or this, special?
You mean for April or ballot in November?
Yeah. mean, if we're
Sure, I
gonna-
mean, I think if you all can drum up people that would be interested in running, that would be terrific.
But that would that would be sure to create, I mean, you could get elected if you had 8 votes,
Or not.
or 9.
Well, if you each come up with somebody, then they've got to get more than,
If we all decide who to write in, we don't even have to ask them.
That's true.
5.
You get
We got at
volunteers.
least 5 votes, right?
So this would be the same election that they're voting on for
Yeah.
the replacement of Rick Murray on the selectmen?
Yeah.
Just adding, now would this be for only till
Then
the
we-
following May, or would it be?
I think it
for
would be
the-
to fill out the remainder of the term.
yeah, so.
Which-
April?
For the alternate.
It would be for your old term, do you
Yeah.
know when it ended?
No.
It would be a year from now, but if the person was going to be appointed the alternate member by your joint vote, it would only be till the term in the springtime.
Yeah.
I don't know if,
If they get elected, what is it for?
that's what we'll have to ask her that.
Yeah, we'll have to ask about that.
That may be
I
worth
would
it.
think it would be the remainder of the term.
Because I think that's
Yeah,
what I'm working on now, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, you started new
Yeah,
when you were
okay.
elected.
All right, I didn't know if it was the rest
You
of
have
Eric's.
a
or-
3-year term
Yeah.
from, from last April.
Yeah, so I think there's 2 years on that term.
Yeah,
But can you just check that and see?
yep,
And maybe get a sense as to whether that makes sense to anybody but me.
yep.
Okay. I can't quite see the clock, but I'm going to assume that it's 8:30.
Almost, 8:26.
Thank you.
now we have to wait.
I thought I had it covered there for a minute. Or for 4 minutes is the equivalent. But I could expect nothing less from the person who brings us accounting in minutes.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to call it 8:30. So the next item on the agenda is the continuation of the public hearing, accessory dwelling special permit for 113 Arbor Way Drive. Applicant owner is Russell E. Williams. Michael, the floor is yours. Why don't you introduce yourself, those that are going to be supporting you, and tell us where we are and what you intend to do.
Thank you. Again, for the record, my name is Michael Hayes. I'm the attorney in Scituate. With me tonight is Russ Williams, who is the owner of the property. Russ and his wife Nancy purchased this home in 1997 and have lived there as their principal residence ever since. The application obviously before you is for a accessory dwelling. Their existing home is on 113 Arbor Way, is in the R1 residential district, which requires 40,000 square feet of land, 100 feet of frontage, 30-foot rear and front setbacks, 15 side yard setbacks, and 175 lot width. The lot in question contains 40,032 square feet, and the dwelling meets all the dimensional requirements in the town. The home was originally built in the 50s. It was renovated in 1989 with a valid building permit to add a 2-bedroom addition to the house. The house currently and since then has been a 6-bedroom, 3.5-bath dwelling with 2,401.6 square feet of living area, plus a 2-car garage. We were told that the purpose of the addition in 1989 was the then owner was having his daughter and grandchild move in with them, and was to give them a semi-independent living space for the daughter and the grandchild. Our proposal is to seek the approval of the planning board for an accessory dwelling that will be completely within the structure. There will be no changes at all to the facade or outside of the structure. It is a 2-bedroom accessory dwelling. It will contain, if approved, 918.7 square feet, which is a 38% of the total existing living area. It is our view that this is the type of proposal that was envisioned when the bylaw was set forth, which I believe we can all agree encourages accessory dwellings. And it is our contention that the proposal meets all the requirements of 530.1, the purpose of the accessory dwelling bylaws. This proposal, in our view, especially confirms to the bylaw purpose clause 530.1E, which is to make quote unquote legal situations that may in the past have been a little bit murky. With your permission, I'd like to go through 530.2, the special permit procedures and conditions, and then I'd be happy to take any questions from the committee.
Floor is yours, sir.
as you know, 530.2 has a number of requirements. The accessory dwelling must be a complete separate housekeeping unit that functions separately from the primary structure or dwelling. 530.2B is not applicable in this case because that section relates to accessory dwellings in business districts. Subsection C allows one accessory dwelling unit within a single-family house or on a lot containing a single-family house. D requires that the accessory dwelling is located within the interior of and under the same roof as the single-family dwelling. Is one of the allowed configurations for an accessory dwelling. E, the accessory dwelling must be designed so that the appearance of the building remains unchanged as much as feasibly possible. Obviously, this proposal will not change the appearance of the dwelling at all. For the moment, I'd like to skip F, because we're going to have, I believe we'll have a discussion on F. I'd like to go through the remaining subsections and then come back to F if I may. G requires 2 off-street parking spaces. H states that the home must meet all the applicable standards of codes and bylaws. And I, it requires that adequate provisions for the sewerage, waste, and drainage to comply with Board of Health regulations. And this home is a Title V compliant 6-bedroom system. So, I would like now to get into F, which I believe we'll probably have some discussion about.
Before we get into that,
Yeah.
You went through a whole laundry list of things. I just wanted to make sure I understood how this complies with that.
Certainly.
Okay? If that's okay with you.
No, that's good.
You mentioned a separate housekeeping unit. Could you, I'm not sure I just
Yes.
understand the diagram I'm looking at here,
Yes.
so could you identify that for me?
Let me walk you through it.
It's like a basement, this is lower level.
Yeah,
The-
I'm not sure what that is. So.
That's
The
basement.
accessory unit, if you're looking at what I provided, the entrance to the accessory unit is to the left of the 2-car garage. That brings you into, which is at grade level. It is a slight walk down to the,
So that's right here. These 2 doors. Is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about? Okay.
will be the main entrance. The main entrance to the house is to the left of that, the front of the building, the center of the building.
Okay. Thank you.
It will then lead you into the down not a full story, a half story into the proposed living room and the proposed sunroom and the upstairs and the kitchen. Excuse me. Upstairs will be, which is a level up, will be the bedrooms in the back.
Oh, I see. So the rectangle, the big rectangle to the left is essentially the other dwelling.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I was trying to figure that out. All right.
And it is totally located within the existing structure.
And the alternate means of egress is?
Alternate means of egress is on the upper level of the accessory dwelling. There is a door that goes out to a deck and then out. There were also emergency.
This here? Is
Yes.
that these double doors here? I'm looking at?
Yes.
In the sunroom?
Yes.
Okay.
There are also, in the lower level, there are emergency egress through windows, large windows, at the lower level. So that would be available for an emergency egress as well. And then the final page on the handout shows the two-car garage occupied, and there is plenty of space for additional parking easily up to 5 spaces within the existing driveway.
Actually, the
Well,
third page
Yeah.
should be proposed primary dwelling, right? Just
Yeah.
to, you have it as proposed accessory dwelling, but it really should be,
That's the big rectangle, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's what had me confused.
The third sheet that you handed us
Yes.
should really be proposed primary dwelling, second floor.
Just the
The title.
Yes.
It's this sheet, Michael. That's
That
the
is
sheet.
correct. That is correct. That is a...
Yeah, 'cause it
that is
says
a-
primary
that's
everything
correct.
on it.
That
Okay.
is the primary.
That was a little,
Okay. And then where the egress is there, did you say there's a deck or a set of stairs there? Existing set?
There's a deck and existing deck and stairs.
So there's no need to add stairs
There's
anymore?
no need to do any work at all.
Yeah.
It's a little bit,
What?
So,
And there are two, oh, I'm sorry, you
No, go
finish.
ahead.
No, you finish because we're still on that separate unit thing, so go ahead.
yeah, I just want to make sure that I understand what's, when the measurements were given, what's included in the measurements. So if I look at the main unit, you tell me it's 1,483 feet,
Yes.
right? That's basically the box. Let's see it this way. That's this box here, first and second floor?
Yes.
Does it include any of the
Go up to the
vestibule?
left. Yeah.
So this area here, right, if you can see that's 1,483, and that's first and second floor.
First and second floor.
What
Okay.
about this little piece here? Is
And
that-
what about the entranceway? Where I come through the double set of doors?
Yes.
Is that included or excluded?
That is the accessory.
Okay, so all of that
Next
is
to the garage, Bill?
next to the garage?
Yes.
Where the closet is on the left there, that closet with the sliding doors, it looks like.
So the limitation is if you came in the accessory dwelling door, there's a second door actually into the unit, it looks like?
Into the primary?
Right. Well, no, that's the accessory, right? This is a primary.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If I come
There's
in-
no door here.
This is...
See, it's just door to
Oh, okay.
There's no door to the kitchen from that accessory, for the
So do we
primary
draw-
dwelling kitchen.
you're
So
kind
for
of-
the
So
measurement,
it's-
do you draw an imaginary line across the wall to say, okay, that's, just trying to make sure we understand the calculation here.
We took the measurements from wall to wall.
Okay, so that little jog, as I understand it, that little jog belongs to the primary?
This here.
Yes.
The long rectangular piece? Is that what you need?
Now, I'm talking about this piece right here that looks like it has a table and a door. There's no door
Oh,
coming...
that is the primary dwelling. That's
so
the
that's the
primary
primary
kitchen.
And this little vestibule that goes into the garage and into the, does that belong to the accessory dwelling? or
That's
does it
the
belong-
accessory.
Okay.
So the
So
way
it's-
that this plan
this
is,
is
you actually,
accessory.
to access the accessory dwelling, you're walking through the main primary dwelling?
No. They're not, there is no...
it looks kind of like.
According to this, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
You can, yes, you get into the kitchen from the first door, take a left, or you go straight to the accessory dwelling.
So is there a door there?
There is a
The
door.
plan does not show a door.
No, there's no door to
No,
the
there is a
kitchen.
door, there is a
would
door
almost
straight ahead
be a
into
primary,
the primer, to the
That's what
accessory hallways.
Right.
For lack of a
But
better
as,
term.
if I'm accessing the accessory dwelling, I have to first sort of walk through that little vestibule,
Vestibule.
which is the part of the primary dwelling. Is that correct?
Yes. The reason why there was no door put there is because of the accessory dwelling. We did not have permission to install a door there.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
So they needed to be open one to the other.
Yeah, because that's
Yeah.
what
Which-
basically it is now. Yeah.
So does that mean the 918 square feet includes that little double door breezeway, or does not? Because that looks like the primary dwelling now.
I'd say it starts at the second door in there, Steve.
That's where I was thinking, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to confirm.
Yeah.
No, this should actually be the primary dwelling.
The
And
Okay.
the 900 starts at the second door.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. So this is all,
So that,
yeah, it
so
starts right
it's not,
here.
it's not that.
That's primary, yeah.
But at some point, if this were to be approved, you'd have to have some door there, or that would be like neither primary or the accessory.
It would be a common
Common
vestibule.
It'd be a
Your
common.
common area, so
Yeah.
you would need a kitchen door there, yes.
You could put a pocket door there if you still wanted to have the table where it's shown.
Okay. Any other questions on the
Well, since we
separate unit stuff?
since Michael went over all these and he talked about did you
I
want
is
to,
what?
the sewage, did you want to address that? I mean,
Oh, yeah, I had parking and sewage, so I wanted to do both.
or
things.
do we want to go just through the dimensional requirements? I didn't know how we wanted to handle that. Because I mean, basically what I heard Michael say was that you meet all the regulations of I.
Let
Right,
me talk about time.
okay.
All right.
That's on
One
the list.
one of the things I provided for you tonight are a copy of the Title V report, which conditionally passes. The reason it conditionally passed was that there was, had nothing to do with the adequacy of the septic system. There were some items that both the Title V inspector and the Board of Health wanted taken care of. They wanted the distribution box replaced, which has been done. There was an old septic tank on the property, unused,
In the front.
that needed to be filled in, which has been done. Russ had contracted in conjunction with and working with the Board of Health to perform all required and suggested work, which as of yesterday was completed and inspected.
Wednesday was completed, Wednesday was completed and inspected on the 26th.
And inspected by the Board of Health. We are awaiting the revised Title V inspection report that will remove the conditionally passed into a passed six-bedroom system.
What's the situation? I think when I read it, they said that the Board of Health said that there were only 2 people living in the house and the septic system, and it wasn't really tested for 6 people.
One person.
There's only one person, yeah.
So how does that factor in?
Well, it's designed as a six-bedroom system, and the flow in the gallons per day per bedroom, the system is adequate to handle what the requirement of the Board of Health is for that many people, that many bedrooms. We don't anticipate there's no issue in our mind on that at all. One of the things that the Board of Health wanted was the second washer and dryer to be, or washing machine, to be connected to the system, which has also been done.
I thought I read somewhere that they felt the test wasn't adequate because there weren't enough people in the house.
Can
So
I-
have
can I
they
say
moved
something,
off from
please?
that?
Yes.
I did confirm with Jennifer Keith late this afternoon that they are working on making the distribution box and everything that she said in her memo compliant, and that it is qualified for a six-bedroom house. I specifically asked her that this afternoon, doesn't qualify as a six-bedroom, and she said.
Even with the removal of the tank in the front.
Yeah, they're doing all the remediation things that they are supposed to be doing, according to Jennifer.
Okay.
They took out the garbage grinder.
It's in the process. Jennifer says it's in the process.
Okay.
So it
that
has
could
to be
have a
all,
condition on it, yeah.
they're in the process of doing that, but she confirmed it is suitable for 6 bedrooms.
Okay, so just to be clear, all the items that Jennifer indicated in her letter are being addressed.
Yeah, that was the August 19th.
Yep.
The last one. I'm just
Not
curious.
necessarily have been addressed, but they are addressed.
They are.
So they are in the process of being addressed.
Okay.
If the washer and dryer, or excuse me, just the washer, wasn't connected, where was it going? Was it going to the front system?
That, it was connected when we bought the house, and it was inspected by Tiger Inspection Service, and that is the way that the wash machine was. Since the work has been done on the yard, and the inspector told me that it would have to be relocated to the system. There was already a piping system going into the tank for the new system. And I relocated the washer and did what was to comply with his request.
Okay.
I capped off the old system, which went out to a dry well.
Oh, is that what, okay, that's where it went.
Okay. Anything else now?
Let me
I
just say.
had one on parking.
You already said the distribution box, the laundry, the garbage grinder, and you said that it's already been crushed and backfilled the front?
Yes, it has.
system? Okay. No questions on that.
The pipe has been disconnected at there were 2 distribution boxes on what they would classify as a new system on the side yard. They cut the pipe, I have pictures here, they cut the pipe and put in a new D-box that was required, and they ran a new pipe from the tank to the D-box. The other pipe going out front to the old septic system was cut off, and they backfilled it with sand and dirt.
Okay, thank you.
It was pumped before they backfilled it.
Okay. And then just a question, parking says 2 off-street parking spaces, I think you mentioned that. Can you sort of explain to me how that works?
Well, currently, there's a 2-car garage. There's plenty of room for 5 vehicles to be parked in the driveway outside of the garage.
Yeah.
And Russ could tell you what he would expect would be where he would be parking and.
So who owns the garage? The primary dwelling?
The primary dwelling, yes, that would be.
Okay, so which spots belong to the accessory dwelling? And I'm just envisioning that you have 2 completely separate households going here. And I can't imagine you want them sort of right behind the primary dwelling trying to get out of the garage, so.
That, I think, would be up to the owner. I'm in the midst of selling the property right now.
Oh,
And I think that would be something that the owner would be doing. Myself, it was just my wife and my 2 kids there for about a few years. And my wife parked her car inside the garage. My truck stayed out in the driveway, and the two kids' cars stayed out in the driveway. I was usually the first one to leave in the morning, so I parked directly behind my wife's car, which was in the garage. So the kids had the other 2 spots.
is there room, just curious, is there room on this side so that nobody blocks the primary dwelling?
There's it curves.
I can't tell from the,
Yeah,
from the
it
drawing.
curves a little bit over, so that basically when you come in, it's a two-car driveway, but then they put in a spot for a third car, right.
Where that 3rd car is a curved extension, paved surface.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm reading the bylaw. It says here, at least 2 private. So the word private assumes that they're dedicated to the accessory dwelling. So that's why I agree with Steve that it might be hard to have the one be right behind the pine area.
And this is all in the same curb cut, though? There's no new curb cut or anything like
No.
that? Okay. Is there do you have a picture of this? Like elevation view or something?
No.
Or a plan view?
We don't have another site plan showing the parking and, where the driveway goes, if this parking is off to the side, just to make sure that car can come and go.
No,
We have a Google shot on his cell phone, so we can certainly get one for you.
How wide is the curb cut approximately? Is it 2 cars wide, say?
It's 2 cars wide.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
like,
it's a little more than 2 cars.
I'm trying to get it,
Okay.
get the screen. It's locked.
There's no signal in
It's
here.
locked.
yeah.
So we know that.
We're in a dead zone.
I drove by earlier this
I don't
week,
know
but
how to make it happen.
picture normally-
Yeah, we usually rely on you.
I know. Well, I guess we
It
could.
keeps flipping around, you see how it goes over the side. It's a little fuzzy, but you can see there's a driveway, almost like a pull-out.
Oh, yeah, I see it, yeah.
So technically, you could potentially make that
Yeah.
on the side of the house.
Oh, really? I didn't
But I
see
think
that.
I think you
It's not deep.
could put 6 cars there, but you're gonna end up playing musical cars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, what's the definition of the word private?
nobody else can park there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yours.
The bylaw also refers to business district, and I think from her, private is not in the, we've had this before, it's most codes. There are parking areas in the business district that are not private.
Oh,
Now, this is the residential zone, this is it's on the property.
It's in the back of this?
No, it's
Oh,
not.
okay.
It's in,
Here you go,
Dedicated
Bob.
to use
I
of,
didn't see that.
private is not, is I believe,
The truck is in that area that we're talking
Yeah.
about, this curb.
public
Yeah,
parking.
okay,
in
so
the
it's a
area,
full-
Which is the situation in the business district for accessory
Bumps
dwelling.
out up there,
yeah.
Whereas all the property,
Okay.
all
but
the
then the
parking
driveway itself
in a
is
residential zone.
pretty
is
wide
private
all the way out.
by
Certainly is.
So if,
Dedicated to the one. or the other.
one unit car is on the left and one's on the
One
right,
of the
yeah,
units is going to be
you're
owned by the,
you're always
owner
gonna have a
occupant,
car
owned by
that's
one of the-
associated with your unit
They
that
might
can get out onto
select
the
to say
road.
you
Yeah,
can
I
use
think
one of
there's
the
3
parking
initially,
garages and
Right,
one behind
right,
it.
right,
And
right.
you live in the garage
Truck and
behind it.
mom can come and
How
go
they
if she
choose to
wants.
do
Yeah.
it, the owner occupant is going to
I
make
don't
that
know if
decision.
that's a terrible
But they
problem.
put all
No.
5 places in the driveway and the 2 in the garage are private.
Yeah, our objective is really more primarily to make sure there aren't people parking along the side of the street and that kind of stuff.
I think private means it belongs to the people using that unit. I mean, I think you gotta take it in the context.
It may not work, but they can put in an adequate number of cars.
Just be the first one up in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Or the last one in.
Yep.
The last one in is the really
Exactly.
Okay. Does that satisfy the concerns we have with,
Yeah, I just wanted to go through the things
Okay.
Mr. Hayes had gone through.
that brings us back to F.
Okay, as you know, there are 2 main elements to F, 2 standards that the board needs to find. First is that the accessory dwelling unit needs to be clearly subordinate part of the single-family dwelling. And the size is the size of the accessory dwelling is a maximum of 750 square feet or 40% of the total square footage of the floor area of the primary dwelling, whichever is greater. The proposal before you seeks to create a 918.7 square foot accessory dwelling within a 2,401.6 square foot home, which results in the accessory dwelling being 38% of the total. One of the discussions I anticipated we'd have tonight, because Laura and I have discussed it as well, is a potential second interpretation of that bylaw. Specifically, is the accessory dwelling of 918 square feet that, if approved, would leave 1,482 square feet for the primary space. That percentage turns out to be 60, the 1918 makes 62% of the remaining 1,482 square feet. I respectfully disagree with that interpretation. On an accessory dwelling within an existing home, the primary dwelling that is described and stated in the bylaw is the existing home. Nowhere in the bylaw are the words primary dwelling unit used. So my argument is that the only way to determine the percentage for an accessory dwelling within an existing home is to require the accessory dwelling to be 40% of the existing primary dwelling. Furthermore, the final sentence of 530.2 states that the purpose of this section, the computation of maximum floor area shall be limited to the principal residence and shall exclude the floor area in an attached or detached structure. This, I believe, supports my interpretation of the bylaw and supports the calculation of using the floor area of the existing primary dwelling. This is especially true, I think, because in section D, they separate the three types of accessory dwellings that are acceptable in the town of Scituate. One is what we have here, an accessory dwelling inside a single-family home. Number two would be in a structure that's attached to a home. And the third would be a detached structure. So I think that the proper reading of the and strict reading of the language in the bylaw permits the board to determine that the meaning of that 40% on a accessory dwelling, which is requested within an existing dwelling, is the 40% of the then existing dwelling. Finally, Neil Duggan, our zoning enforcement officer, whose job it is to interpret the bylaw, we feel agrees with this position. This has been an ongoing discussion for many years, obviously. I believe you have, and if you don't, I can read it to you, Neil's 1998 memo, which he expresses his view that this is the correct interpretation of our bylaw. Neil was asked last week if he, and I have an email to you that I can share with you, that he has not changed his position. He still believes on a accessory dwelling within an existing single-family home, the calculation of 40% of the primary existing dwelling is the proper measuring. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions from the board before we hear from Laura? Laura?
This one is a little bit of a red herring. Apparently, years ago, well, not apparently, I'm actually pretty familiar with Neil's memo because it came out of it generated some discussion about what the area should really, how the area really should be measured back in the 1990s. And Neil seemed to come around to share the opinion that I had based on reading similar bylaws, working with similar bylaws on the Cape. These bylaws are not uncommon. There was a collection of them that was made by an organization called the Pioneer Institute. They came up with over 104, and I don't think they even got information from every single town in the state. So from the towns that they did get information, they got 104 accessory dwelling bylaws. And when you look at the way they're intended to work, they're really intended to be subordinate to the other part of the house that's like the main part of the house. And what I would interpret is that because they're using the word primary here, it's an adjective, it's describing a particular type of dwelling, a particular dwelling in this scenario, and that dwelling is the other dwelling besides the accessory dwelling. There's the accessory dwelling and the primary dwelling, and that's why they have those two adjectives, is to distinguish them. But all of that aside, after Neil and I had the conversation back in 1998, everything went to the other interpretation, that the one unit be 40% of the larger one. So every single one that the planning board has looked at and that I've looked at the area, that's the way the area has been, and that's the way my thinking has been organized, that's the way the memos have gone, that's the way the planning board has gone, and the decisions have gone. So I think it just doesn't quite square with what the planning board's been doing pretty consistently to change the whole method of interpretation. On the other hand, it seems like a pretty innocuous situation. It was used by family. The two units are so close together that if you rented it out to a separate individual, an independent of your family, it would have to be somebody that you'd be seeing a lot of the time. They'd be, walking, like you said, right through, almost through your kitchen to get to their unit. So it's got a very close connection. I think also where there was the kind of ambiguity back in the 1990s, maybe an exception should be made for this. But I guess what I'm suggesting is that if the board wants to approve this one, that you just do it with the understanding that this really is different from the way you've done the others. And not that this one shouldn't be approved, but that it's different. And I think you can find reasons maybe to approve it because of the interconnection and the likelihood of something maybe going afoul with this one is pretty limited because of that. But the area, the area relationship is really quite different in this one. On the other hand, you could also look at it. You've got a couple of bedrooms and a living area on the basement level. Then you've connected that up with some some different rooms on the first floor. Maybe it could be kind of disconnected and the whole apartment area put onto that lower level. Maybe that could be done by whoever buys the house, so you wouldn't have to do it now and just be, a condition that it be rearranged that way. I mean, I think there are a whole lot of options here. So, so that's just some things to think about.
Yeah, this one's like mixing Jell-O without a bowl.
Ooh, that sounds sort of messy.
Yeah, well, it is. Let me ask this question. Is it used as an accessory dwelling right now?
No.
Can I ask, in your mind, of 530.1, what fits, since the house is for sale, what condition A through E do you feel best fits the description of what you're trying to go for? I mean, for instance, it's not obviously for a family member if you're going to be selling the house. It's not for an elderly parent or a child. So
what I said before, I think would accurately describe this situation, which would be 530.1 subsection E, to legitimize conversions to enable the town to monitor conversions for code compliance. Again, this was one of the murky situations of many within Scituate at the time that was used as a quote-unquote semi-private separate dwelling, where a daughter and a child lived within the family, within the same home. All it lacked to be a completely separate unit or dwelling was a stove. It would be pretty easy to turn this into an accessory dwelling by just adding stove. So I think it accomplishes that in that it brings it into the public purview and the purview of the planning board. Obviously, it's necessitated involvement of the Board of Health to ensure that the septic is up to snuff and is appropriate. But moreover, I think it adds to all of the requirements in 530.1 as far as providing, a variety of housing types in Scituate to make available, as the language requires in the bylaw, to make available to moderate income households, and to provide an opportunity for homeowners who can no longer physically or financially maintain one to turn it into one and an accessory. So, I mean, I really think this is a poster child for the bylaw in general, especially when you consider that it is one of those murky dwellings that have existed in Scituate for years, that is through the application process is certainly brought into the light and would require, if approved, the purview of the board. And I think Laura and I have talked about this. This, in my view, is a very difficult call on the percentage, but I do believe that the difference on this one is that it is all located within an existing dwelling, and I think that makes a difference in my view.
Yeah, I guess I'd follow that, except for the fact I think you lose your poster child status when I asked whether it's currently an accessory dwelling, and the answer was no. If the answer was yes, then I think you got a poster child.
Well, it actually looks to me like it
I'm having
has a
trouble
stove too.
figuring it out.
Maybe I'm misinterpreting this drawing, but is everything in this drawing what's there right now? Or it just says proposed? So none of this has been built out.
Correct.
None of this has been built out, so it's not being used as an accessory dwelling.
Well, we couldn't use it as an accessory dwelling because we didn't have the permit.
It doesn't have the kitchen in it? It doesn't have the stove in it?
No. And the reason that I was told we couldn't put a stove in there is because we didn't have a accessory dwelling permit.
Okay.
But at the same time, if I read through all the information correctly, at the time that they came before, in 1998, before the board, there was the addition, though. The addition was made sort of as an accessory. So it wasn't really carved out of the house per se to begin with. It was an addition that was created onto the house. Is that correct?
The previous owner had added on to that home for that purpose, for his child and grandchild.
Right.
The addition was done in 1989.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And there was no kitchen in it. There was no accessory dwelling on the building permit. It was just to add some extra bedrooms.
All right.
So let me make sure that I understand. None of the walls that are shown in this as the accessory dwelling are built now?
Pardon?
None of the walls, with the exception of the exterior ones, are in place?
Oh, when you enter the accessory dwelling hallway, there's a flight of steps that go downstairs to 2 bedrooms. And a bath with a shower. If you go up the stairs, you go into a large area. One side, people classify it as the living room, and on the other side, they classify it as a sunroom. Then there is a galley in between, I believe the original drawing from the original owner of the house back in '89 classified that as a wet bar.
So there is a sink there currently.
There is a sink there, yes. There's also a refrigerator there.
So the only thing it doesn't have, based on the drawings, is the stove.
Right. And once again, like I said, I couldn't put the stove in because...
It would be a unit.
Right. And, you know, put a stove in there without having the proper permit, something can happen in the house, it's not covered by the insurance company.
Bill, can I ask a question?
You sure can.
Why did you decide to go to the trouble and expense of getting this officially approved as an accessory dwelling? If you're selling the property, why wouldn't it have been much more convenient for you, at least, to allow the new owner, if he or she so chose, to go through this process rather than go through it yourself?
My wife and I approached the board back in '98 to have a accessory dwelling permit. She withdrew the request because she did not want any problems with the neighbors and our kids. At the time, our kids were 16 and 17, and we were afraid that the neighbors may have said something and created a problem. So my wife decided to drop it, and now I decided to go ahead and push it through.
I'm not sure that answers my question.
So maybe the question I wanted to ask the same thing is that, is having an accessory dwelling, is it valuable for the house as far as real estate goes? Does it increase the value of the house?
That's a good question. I think it depends on, obviously, the buyer. I mean, it would be attractive to some buyers and not to others, so.
Because I had a very similar question that Bob asked, like, why now? Since they're necessary, I mean, like you said, maybe on E, but there wasn't a family member.
What I can tell you is that Russ, and correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, believes that the house, in his opinion, is more marketable as an accessory.
Take a recess.
Yeah, just keep going.
And just to clarify, I guess since, every single accessory dwelling that we have approved since 1998 has been calculated on the primary dwelling, and 40% of the primary dwelling, not the entire house, but what we consider to be the primary dwelling, the larger of the two units.
The as-built condition.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
To be built condition.
Has there been another situation in the 10-year span? Where is it? How long has it been? 15, yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
Where there's been inside an existing house, like where there's been something carved away like this? Or has it always been, at least from my experience, it's typically been or on top of a garage or something like that?
I'm quite sure there have been others. I know there have been some in the basement. There was one on Hazel Ave that was a basement.
We just did one near the Rotary off of Chief Justice Cushing.
Oh, yeah.
That was a
Right.
basement, well, a walkout, obviously.
Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah,
right.
that was
That's right.
fairly new. That was
Yeah.
fairly
Brand new.
Yeah. And that was, again, calculated on the entire, the primary unit being the larger of the units.
Yeah,
So the 40% was of, not the entire house, but of the larger unit.
yeah, there's actually been 56.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that for the record.
Yeah, okay.
That was my understanding as well, but I wanted to be clear.
Any more questions?
So if this were, theoretically, if we were to comply to the primary dwelling and the 40%, what would have to be removed? Or could, as an example, could you have, like at the back of the garage, like the door, the front door being there, and the closet area still be part of the primary? Would that make any difference?
You're architecting, which is exactly what I did.
Okay,
I don't
so
think
you know my
Yeah,
process.
yeah, I mean,
Could you
it's
carve out-
conceivable you could make this happen within 750 square feet without changing too many things, which would kind of take you off the hook of what the percentage was.
Right, that's what I'm trying to get
Yeah,
at.
because it's only 150,
Right, exactly
Well, one
right.
question comes down to this box that looks like utilities, and does that belong to the primary, or does that belong to the accessory dwelling?
Well, there's a door that opens into the accessory dwelling according to the original floor plans for the addition,
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
didn't see a door on this drawing, so.
right? But I'll bet there's no reason it couldn't. I don't know if do you know offhand, Joe, if that's calculated as living space, that utility room on the lower level of the accessory wing?
How do we get to the 9818?
Sure.
There is,
I did it again. Mike, I'm sorry. God,
You have a door back here.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah, something like
Still
that.
it's,
So that wasn't part of the calculation
No,
anyway?
it was
Okay.
not.
no,
okay,
this
so,
is-
I beg your pardon.
Was it
Does
part of
every-
the,
do
Truly.
people want copies of the breakdown of all the rooms? Because we do.
I saw that, yeah.
Well,
Yes,
I know. If you take the two hallways, and you take the bath laundry that are on that first floor after you walk in from the kitchen,
right.
and I'll disclose, my wife is a realtor listing the property for sale, so I have some familiarity with the property. If you take those three areas, you're going to get to 100 close to 130 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
133?
You take that 130 out, and you're getting up close to 750. The calculation that you're trying to do is conceivable if you just go back to the stairs. It's not the way it will be likely used, because you have then a long hallway to walk to an entry area.
Mhm.
In order to make the numbers work, the owner can't do anything about how the house was constructed.
Mhm.
It was built this way, it came to him in this fashion. The most logical way to demise the property is the way he's proposing to do it.
Mhm.
As a member of the zoning board, I can add some little information. We had a property in the Sand Hills area where it came before zoning for an addition to be put on it. They doubled the size of the house. It was about an 800, less than an 800 square foot house. They put a common entry area and a 749 square foot accessory dwelling.
Right, right.
And then after we approved the structure, because we kind of had to, there was very little in our bylaws that would allow us to say you can't do this.
Right.
They demised this property into a 50-50 split. But one of the units was 749 square feet. So it didn't meet the bylaw. But it represented 89% of the primary dwelling.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it was approved because of that 750. So I'm suggesting that the logical demisement of this property, the way it was constructed under permits, is to demise it the way the applicant is proposing.
Mhm.
And the the reading of the bylaw being perhaps a question, but nothing to do with the way the structure was built. To answer the question from the marketability of it, it was, as a realtor, and I also have a license to practice real estate. I'm a middle school teacher. But the biggest question someone gets is, well, what can I do with that? This is a 6-bedroom colonial with a tail wagging the dog situation. Here's a big garage with a small unit behind it next to a 4-bedroom colonial. Well, that's an in-law apartment. Most people want to use it as an in-law apartment because of the proximity to the two houses. They may use it as someone who wants to be there. The family lives in the main larger house. The grandparents live in the smaller house with some privacy. That's the way it's likely to be used. But the biggest question from a marketing standpoint is, what is it? And knowing that it's an accessory dwelling allows the owner to represent it that way to a buyer and clear up that question. The questions you guys are having is the same question the buyer has. So it's not so much a question of the value is increased, but the marketability is increased because it's clear.
It's just a better story to tell a potential buyer.
It's much easier to say,
Sure.
It could be used for this, it could be used for that. So they say, I don't want someone living there, that kind of thing. But they also may say, oh, so my friend could come down and pay me rent. They don't have to be related to it.
Or my mother.
So another question, just where it says proposed accessory bathroom, on the first page of the handout you gave us, I'm assuming that is existing, is that correct?
Yes.
So where the lower wall, or the one that's toward the bottom of the page of the bathroom, what if you just extended that across to the garage? So that then you'd have to build a door from the back end of the garage into that area, and then everything else would be part of the primary. So that walkway and the closet would be part of the primary.
Yeah,
Would that be
I scaled, you only save about 80 square feet by doing that.
Oh, really? Because then I was thinking.
But yeah, that's a
you could
place to
have
start.
The primary, or excuse me, the secondary accessory dwelling, they could have that, the left garage, and then they could pull in, and then you could, get out of your car, walk up a little step or whatever to the door of your entrance, basically, right there.
Where's this?
I was proposing that you take this wall across like this, then you'd have a door that would come in like right here in the garage.
Somewhere in here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then all this would be the primary, and then this would be the accessory.
And it gives them a
This is part of
separation.
the
A little more
primary.
privacy also.
It gives them a separation.
Right.
You're right.
The garage
The
belongs to
only-
the primary.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In this particular case, you'd have to make it where I'm assuming that this garage, one space, the space to the left would be part dedicated to the accessory dwelling.
Or another thing you could
Or just
do would
carve
be
out
to take out,
entryway on the right side.
to convert the garage into living space, and then you probably wind up with 40%. It's a good-sized garage.
Make the garage living space for the primary dwelling.
Right,
So-
make it a playroom or something. But then you'd have to insulate it, heat it, then it's
Bonus room, that seems to be a good.
bonus room, right.
You could just carve out this little
But
piece.
that's not,
In the
you don't do
garage,
that by
make
just
that-
changing the
Just put
title.
Put a dog like that.
Yeah. Come into the living room.
But then, but your quick calculations, you said, Bob, that only gave you about 80 square feet?
I didn't, I don't think, do quite what you did, Richard. That was all I did was move the door.
I was also not clear how you came up with a 2,400, because on the assessor's card, it says 2,600 for the square footage of the house.
The assessor's cards tend to have errors. Partly,
Well, they measure they take a tape and they measure the whole thing out.
it's partly because this is a slight front-to-back split. The living room it's a cathedral ceiling above the living room.
Okay.
So the living room's up a bit from the rest of the main floor?
In the original colonial, it's a half flight up to the living room
Yeah.
and a half flight down to the den room.
Okay, right.
And that kind of ties into something I've been trying to figure out, is where do the stairs from the second floor of the colonial come down into the living room? According to the drawing, it almost looks like it comes down over the stairs that go down to the room in the basement. You walk into the couch, and then I don't think it could come down where the stairs go up into the living room.
The living room goes down, you go up to the bedrooms or down to the kitchen. And
So
you can
this
also go
stair,
down-
okay,
and
so
you
that
also
stair.
And you can also go down to the,
All right, so I misread the stairs here. So those are the,
You know, speaking about this earlier and being a little bit up in the air about a recommendation, I thought that stove was already in place. I thought that stove was there now, but it's not there.
Previous owner may have had it there, yes.
So I guess what's happening is you're looking at someone really trying to kind of take a step beyond where things are right now. I mean, I would imagine that you could market this as a potential accessory dwelling with certain improvements or, certain changes. You always read in real estate ads, possibility of second unit, which gives everybody the information that it's not quite a second unit. So I don't know. I mean, I think there are maybe some other options to think about here.
And this is, just to clarify, I think I know all the steps, but let's say theoretically this gets approved this evening. If he does sell it, then the new owner would have to come in before us, or at least before you, and get an affidavit that they're living there, right? Is that the only thing they have to do?
Well, to get a certificate of occupancy for the accessory dwelling.
They have to prove that
They have to say they don't live in one of those
They are
spaces.
living there. They will not be able to rent out the place if they're not living there.
That's
Yeah.
really the only thing they sort of have to
In
prove.
theory, yeah, typically we get all that with the application because there's sometimes a disconnect between the certificate of occupancy
Well, this is the
process.
1989 edition. So they didn't call these bedrooms then.
The previous owner was using it
mechanical.
well in the region, and Russ and his family have not. And,
So I guess,
if they want to continue to keep this property
Yeah.
within the legal bounds of our bylaws.
There is a electrical connection for a stove in the accessory, in the dwelling there, in the kitchen area. But I did not have a stove in there. But there is a power source or an electric stove.
220
Yes.
volt and-
Yes.
Let me, with the board's indulgence, open it up to the public.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, let's open it up to the public. If you have anything to say, just give us your name and your address. Tell us what you,
I'm Kathy McDonald. I live across the street from Rossville, Scituate 7. I believe my husband sent a letter to the first meeting that was canceled. We bought our house in 1993 due to the area, liking the area, single-family homes, and to raise our children. And, I heard him speaking about, in a perfect situation, yes, use that as an in-law. So if you change the status of that, they can do whatever they want with that, and that's whoever they please. But right now, sure, it's a perfect in-law setup for somebody who wants their grandparents and parents to live with them in one big family. You're saying there's 4 bedrooms in one side and 2 in the other. You don't know how many people are going to get in those 2 things and have cars. They could have more than the 6 cars everybody's talking about, because they could have 4 cars in this unit, and all those people in this house could have 8 cars. Who knows? But right now, it's a residential, one-family area. All the homes are one-family homes. That's why we bought it. That's why we moved here. We don't know who's going to purchase the house. We don't know what they will do once they get in there, and if this is passed prior to knowing any of that, it's a slippery slope on changing all the dynamics of the neighborhood. Everybody's going to want to add on an addition and rent it out and do this, so it's just going to start something to the area. And it's just not that type of area. It's a very family residential, schools down the end of the street kind of home area. And, you know, there's so many things you people discussed here tonight, and bylaws and numbers and this and that, and I'm visualizing everything you're saying. I'm visualizing the house the way you're saying it and everything else, but you're all using numbers. But it's right across the street, and I'm just concerned. We love Russ, we love the family. It's not that he's leaving. I'm concerned what's coming in. I'm concerned who's going to buy it and what they're going to do with it. You know, I would trust him to do the right thing. I don't know who it is that's going to buy this house and who's going to do that if the dynamics of the house change. And that's our concern.
Thank you.
Would you mind if I ask you a question?
Yes.
Since you've been there since 1993, was it your view that it had been used as an accessory dwelling before they bought the house? The previous owner?
The people that owned it prior to them,
Yes.
it was the one with the daughter and the child that lived in the back.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was a whole family.
Yeah.
She just had her own little area there with her child. Didn't know them that well, I just knew that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name's Arlene Jacobucci, and I live up the street at 97 Arborwood Drive. I've been there 50 years. The house, I remember when I put the original addition on. What I would like to clarify is, what is the difference between a rental apartment and an accessory building? Laura, you use both terminologies. At first you used the word accessory building, and then later on in your discussion you used the word apartment. An apartment to me declares an income. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you put a stove in there, and you do these variations that you had suggested, then this would be an income apartment for the new people living in the primary building, am I correct?
They have to live there, yes.
As long as they're living there.
Okay, so if I live in my house, and I follow the same dynamics, what's to stop me from doing the same thing?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. And what's to stop her or anybody else from doing the same thing?
Nothing.
You're changing the whole configuration of the neighborhood.
Well, it's not that we're changing it, it's allowed by law, by our zoning regulations.
Okay,
So
so if I wanted to do it, I could do it.
as long as you met the zoning bylaw, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, so I could have an income apartment.
Yeah,
You could. Okay. So anybody on the street could have an income apartment.
right.
Okay. Now, what I'm concerned about is the number of people, as Mrs. McDonald suggested, and the number of vehicles. I know people today, every child has a car, every wife has a car. It isn't like before. There was one car. I mean, what's to stop 7 or 8 people from living in this accessory dwelling apartment? I mean, how many cars are we going to accommodate in this driveway? And there's tons of on-street parking now.
Well, we can condition any approval
We condition that.
on the fact that they have to park in the driveway, that they can't park on the street. Are we going to police that?
No.
We're not driving by to police it, but.
Of course not. No, of course not.
They don't
But I'm
have it
saying,
now.
if the stove goes in, then we have per se an apartment.
That's true.
We're not talking about an accessory dwelling. We're not talking about an in-law suite or an au-pair suite or a place for an elderly parent or any of the above. We're talking about a family that's interested in purchasing this house with a direct distinction of bringing in an income.
Yeah, the bylaw is specifically
Potentially.
set up to allow that.
Okay.
It is.
Which is why I think Bob had suggested earlier about why now as opposed to with a potential new family that maybe had an elderly parent or a young child.
We don't know this.
We don't know, yeah.
No, we
that's-
don't know the conditions. Naturally, a home with an apartment. I mean, why use the word accessory dwelling? Why not use apartment? That's what it is. Put a stove in, you got an apartment. Okay? I mean, that's going to appeal to anyone. I mean, to me it would. I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I mean, it would appeal. It's an income. Today, money is huge. It's the biggest priority out there. And that's with everyone. No exceptions. I mean, maybe it would be an au pair suite, I don't know. Maybe they would be using the same common kitchen, but if you put a stove in, that eliminates that possibility. I mean, they would have their own self-sufficient unit. And
It's
they would-
actually,
they would be able
it's a
to charge.
requirement of the accessory dwelling to be.
Right.
Requirement.
Right, it
Yeah.
needs to be
A separate unit,
self-contained.
Yeah.
including the kitchen.
Yeah,
But the stove isn't the deciding factor between an apartment and accessory dwelling.
no, what is it, well, what is? What is?
They're
an
really
accessory
one
dwelling?
and the
What's
same.
different
They
between the
They
two?
are the same.
They are the
They're
same.
essentially the same. The only requirement
Oh, okay.
for an accessory dwelling is that the owner has to either live in the accessory dwelling or live in the main dwelling unit.
So
The
what
owner
this
has to
house
live
is-
on site.
But this house is in transition of being sold. It's not, it doesn't say for sale, it says sale pending.
Mhm.
Okay, so that means to me, which I call Caldwell too to find out, that there is an interested person in this property.
Mhm.
And I would say it's definitely because of the apartment. That's my opinion. I mean, and it's not the way you have to see it, but that's the way I see it. And naturally, it'd be more marketable. I would say another $50,000-$60,000. A house up the street just sold for $480. Okay, this house is marketed at $560. Okay, so, I mean, you see the difference in price, you see the difference, the fluctuation in money. The money is the dividing factor here. I mean, you're talking over $500,000. It's a lot of money. And it's because of the apartment. I would assume.
Certainly possible
Yes, I would assume.
that it's added some value. There's
Yeah.
advantages and disadvantages to living with
With an apartment.
an apartment.
Yeah, there is. But definitely, the presiding factor is the money. The money is, I mean, you're talking about an additional, well, say $485, $550, $70,000, $65,000. It's a lot of money. And naturally, I'm not saying that I have anything against Russ, I don't. If I could do it and get away with it, I might. But because of where I live and the way I've adjusted my lifestyle and the way, it's a family neighborhood.
One family.
I mean, and this is, I'm just concerned about the volume of people that are going to be moving into this apartment.
Right.
That's what I'm concerned about. I mean, a 16-year-old kid, bang, he's got his license. I mean, a mother works, a husband works, any cousin, nephew, niece. I mean, where is the end, where's the limit? I mean, how many cars are you gonna have there? As it is, you can't even get in out of the way some nights. There's so many cars parked on the street. I am not asking you to police it, but I'm saying there could be a lot of cars. More so than accommodate the driveway. We don't know.
Right.
But, well, they're good questions that we have no answer to.
That's it, yeah, I know. No, I know, I hear you.
My name's Joanne Williams O'Brien. I'm actually Russ's daughter. And, I'm actually looking for a house as well. And one of the things with accessory dwelling, and, it's just a stove. However, I'm looking for a house with my family, but also with an accessory dwelling or an in-law for my father. And as much as I love my father, I would like my father to have his own place to cook. So when I'm looking for a house, I'm looking for something with a separate kitchen already in there. So as far as, is someone necessarily going to rent it out? No, it could still very well be a good in-law part, but it has that stove, and by having that accessory dwelling, you're saying, yes, you can have this stove, it's insured, now you can have this true in-law where you can have your privacy as a family, but also you can have your parent, grandparent, whomever, living with you, and do that legally. So there's that side to it too. Yes, it is an accessory dwelling. Yes, you could rent it out. Yes, it could be income. But also by giving that, you're also giving the person who's living with you an actual separate space to be while still being in the house with you.
Yeah,
So I
no
think that's,
question.
that's another part of it. It's not necessarily for rental
It's an
purposes.
option.
It is, but it's also an option just to have the stove for that
I don't know if
separation, that
it's still the way
privacy.
that
It is.
it's laid
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
just, yeah,
It is, you're right. It could be either or.
right.
I think there's
Phil,
Couple of issues here.
one thing I can tell you is that the interested purchaser, the approval of this application is not a condition of any offer that the house will be sold, whether this is approved or not. So at the price has been negotiated.
I can't even hear you.
Thank you, Mike, that's good to know.
I can't even hear you.
So that the interested party in the house doesn't care if this is approved or not. He's going to buy the house, if it's approved, he's going to buy the house if it's not approved.
I was gonna buy the house regardless.
Wait a minute, let's hear from the gentleman in the back.
My name is Tom Lee. I live at 105 Outer Way, and I just want to say I've been friends with the Williams as long as I've been here. And if this was to have come to us saying, you know, they want to make this accessory dwelling strictly for family members, as a friend of mine went through this building, an in-law for his mother. It's on the deed that it was blood relatives only. Now, this was 10, 15 years ago. If this is what we were dealing with today, I'd stand up and say, go for it, because family's supposed to take care of family. But with the house, I have to agree with my other neighbors that once the sale of this house goes through, all those controls are gone. It's a 2-bedroom, it would be considered a 2-bedroom accessory dwelling, but they could drop 6 college kids. They could put any amount of people in there. Again, the parking concerns, and yes, Russ currently has a large driveway, but you can't control the number of people that would move into this 2-bedroom. It would be 2 couples, so they could bring in, kids, 16, 18-year-old kids with them. So when we moved into the neighborhood, it was all single-family homes, and that was the neighborhood that we all chose to live in. And I just feel as this would absolutely change the dynamic of the neighborhood. Maybe the people who are interested in buying a home have an elderly parent, or children, or a divorced mom with 1 child, similar to the original builder, Ed Nailhawk, who put the addition on for his daughter and granddaughter. But we don't know them. So I would say, we've been longtime neighbors and friends with Williams, but where the house would be sold, we have no guarantees, and I just don't want to see the neighborhood change the dynamic.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Let's bring it back to the board. Let's see where the board is.
You have to start with me.
Now I'm going to look at you and say, Bob.
Well, I'm still concerned, not so much about the accessory dwelling, but just about the precedent that it sets because of the other accessory dwellings where we calculated it differently. All, what is it, 56? Is that what you said? All 56, and this would be different. So that, with the issue, like, if this was under the 40% of the primary dwelling, right, which is the rectangle, I don't think we'd have as much of an issue. But now, for me, there are 2 issues. There's the fact that it doesn't meet the one interpretation of the bylaw, and the fact that it is for sale, and we don't know how this unit is going to be used as an in-law or with family. And so those 2 things kind of concern me. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I'm like, let me ask another question, maybe to the audience members. Theoretically, if we did not approve this and it came back before with the new owner, and the new owner did say had about an elderly mother, would the neighbors have any problem with that as an accessory dwelling?
No, not at all. No. Not at all. We all, as Tommy said, he lives right next door to me. Family takes care of family.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to have that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not young myself. I mean, and I'd like to think that somebody might, extend that to me. I think that's an honorable thing to say.
Well, in many of the accessory dwellings that this board has approved, that has been the case. However, I will say, it's not written in saying it has to be a family member. Meaning that, 5 years or 10 years from now, if they sell the house, the new owner, as long as they're living there, could potentially rent it out. So we have not typically conditioned it to say it has to be a blood relative, but we have taken it into consideration when they come before us, and it is for a daughter or a parent. Just to let
like you said, a hardship situation, a sickness. these are all things that happen to all of us, and we have to, be able to accept this. This is part of life. This is the way life is, and I would be in complete agreement with that.
Okay.
I mean, because that's it. That's the way it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
Stephen?
So, well, I just wanted to- so I would be, right now, I think I'm leaning to not approve based on that.
Well, just to take sort of the first point first, which is allowing the accessory dwelling for an in-law or something, I don't really think, as a planning board, we have that latitude. The bylaw's fairly clear about multiple reasons for an accessory dwelling, and so we can't limit it to, it can only be a family member. One of the reasons for having an accessory dwelling is to provide a variety of types of housing to meet the needs of its residents and workers. So that could be an apartment. So I don't think we have that latitude. I mean, it would be nice to know that it is an in-law apartment or something, but we don't have that latitude. I'm kind of in the same place as Richard, is that I don't think we want to change the way we've sort of calculated and evaluated accessory dwellings. And it feels like kind of the way it's been presented is we're kind of going backwards from where we were. And what sort of sticks with me on that is that if you sort of think about that 60/40, if you could really do that with every house in the neighborhood or every house in Scituate, you would essentially be creating neighborhoods of duplexes, as opposed to creating an accessory dwelling that is clearly subordinate to the primary house, the primary residence. So that's a piece that's precedent I don't think we would want to set.
Yeah, and I also want to just iterate, in this particular situation, it's not so bad, but let's say you've got a 6,000 square foot house that now they want to use that as, to do a primary and secondary or accessory dwelling. That starts to get into like sketchy territory for me.
The third thing that I do take your point on is that this may be sort of legitimizing how the property has been used since 1990, since 1989 or whenever it was built, and that is actually one of the purposes of an accessory dwelling. So to the extent that we agree that that might play into this, that's a factor. I mean, my preference would be to find a way to shrink this footprint to a way that it would meet sort of our definition of accessory versus primary. But I understand the other arguments that are being made here as well.
Bob?
Yeah, a couple of points. First, we have brought this up, or brought this issue up before town meeting, and probably will do so again. And I urge everyone at interest to participate in the discussion as we try and craft some changes to this particular bylaw, and then please come and vote, either for or against, whatever the results of that discussion are. But it's definitely a topic worthy of a focus and some discussion. And so I think I speak for the whole board, we believe changes do need to be made. However, right now, the way the bylaw is written, if, for instance, this were a 60-40 split between primary and accessory dwelling, or if the accessory dwelling were 750 square feet or less in living area, my feeling is that we'd have no choice but to okay it. As I see it, neither of those conditions is met, and I'm inclined to vote against it because of that. Just to hit on another point, once an accessory dwelling is approved, the board or anyone else really has no control over how it's used, whether it's an in-law, whether it's a rental, how many people live there. It becomes a Board of Health issue if it's a very extreme situation, but discounting that. And the only restriction is that the owner needs to live in one of the two units, either the accessory dwelling that's created or the main dwelling. I think, again, this is my opinion, but when this bylaw was originally crafted, there needed to be a real present need in the minds of the people who crafted the bylaw that could be demonstrated that the owner of the primary dwelling required for financial reasons, required for family reasons, required for some very, tangible and understandable reason, and those reasons have been talked about here tonight, to have an accessory dwelling, to make it possible for the owner to stay on the property, for example, or to accommodate the owner's close family who had a particular need, that sort of thing. Where this property is being sold, there's absolutely no mention of that, no kind of flavor of that, no breath of that in the discussion, and so that's another reason that I'm inclined to vote against it.
Well,
hearing the story of this property, how it was initially built as the addition for the original owner's, daughter and granddaughter, you can kind of see in the flow of the property that it was designed to be our house and their space out back. And then looking at some of the aerial pictures and seeing the pool and the way the deck kind of wraps around there, it looks to me that it's more set up as that family layout, not as a rental property. I mean, I would imagine it'd be a nightmare if you had a rental property that close to the pool in the backyard for any number of reasons. But I kind of see this flowing as more of as a large 6-bedroom house entertaining the pool, the wet bar back there. I understand what you're trying to do to get the delineation with the accessory dwelling, but hearing from Michael that it doesn't have really any bearing on the sale, and thinking that maybe a family with several kids is going to move in, see the pool, and see the layout of the kids can have their space, I can have mine for many, many years. That's kind of the way I would hope that anyone looking at this property would want to use it. So just kind of seeing the way it's laid out, I would vote against the accessory dwelling certification now, and again, see what a new family might want to do. So those are my feelings on the property.
okay.
Could I add, before you get to yours, just one
Go for it.
potential alternative here, and that is, there still is the opportunity to look at this layout and modify this layout to meet, the requirements as we've laid it out for the accessory dwelling, and we would certainly, I think, entertain, kind of a new version if you were interested in doing that. But I just sort of lay that out as, one of the primary issues here is how large this is compared to the primary dwelling.
Let me see.
I wanted to add on that, I totally agree that there's still you could reconfigure that as one option. The second option is, I think for the board, is we're not opposed to any new owner coming before the board at some later date and seeking an accessory dwelling if there is a situation where they would need it. No, I guess what I'm saying is...
I would still have the same comment about the floor space there.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Let me give you another alternative. Right, and it's one that when I looked at it and I tried to figure it out was that were this to be effectively existing as an accessory dwelling, right, then I think it clearly falls under E, and it clearly falls under the fact, and I think at that point you can rationalize whether it's 40% or 42% or 39%. It becomes somewhat academic. It exists. It is. And one of the primary purposes of this bylaw was to come back up and capture those, make them legal for a lot of reasons, primarily public safety and so forth. But as far as I keep trying to go down that road, and the only thing that I've got that allows me to come back up and have some flow is this outlet that was put in for the stove. because that would allow me to come back and sit there and say that it is in effect an accessory dwelling. Right. Now, the question is, would I go far enough to say it's an accessory dwelling without a stove? I'm not sure. Right. But I guess I'd be willing to hear some sort of an argument that says that in effect this thing already exists, it is in effect an accessory dwelling, and what I'm doing is making it legitimate. That I think would obviate a lot of the issues, at least that I have on it. Short of doing that, not being able to be convinced, right, then I think I agree with the rest of the board that I think that it needs a reconfiguration to come back up to make it work. Right. I do get concerned over the house being sold, right, with not knowing whether this thing is, and it's a slight variation on your response, not knowing whether I got an accessory dwelling, I got an apartment, what I've got associated with it. I got this cloud hanging over my head. Now, it's an interesting cloud because I have the ability to affect whatever that cloud wants me to be. So I think you get a sense of the board that there's additional work to be done, or additional work that could be done on resizing it. I don't think the opportunity exists unless you want to pursue it, and that's the ability to come back up and follow the argument that it pre-exists.
I discussed this with Mr. Williams and thinking your suggestion of taking some time to look at it to see if it can be reconfigured to conform to the board's view of the bylaw is what he'd like to do. Again, because he does want to get this resolved one way or another, but he would appreciate a continuance to give him that opportunity to take a look at it. One of the other things that I just wanted to just bring to the board's attention is, just very quickly, we talk about neighborhoods and how they evolve and how they change and how the bylaw has mechanisms for that, including this. One of the things that in this neighborhood, down the street, about less than 1,000 feet away, is a bed and breakfast. So there are various other uses permitted and in existence in this neighborhood. And again, all we're trying to do is get what we consider was once a legally used dwelling to bring that into conformity with the law and the bylaw. But we would appreciate a continuance to take a look to see if we can reconfigure.
How much time would you need, Mike?
Not long. I don't know when your next meeting is.
We had a time slot because we actually have our meetings pretty booked out. September 11th at 9 p.m.
That would be terrific.
It's the next meeting, right?
That's the next meeting.
That is the next meeting.
Yeah.
How about that?
At 9 p.m.?
That's what you asked for. Yeah.
Unless you want to move it, unless you want to change the time, because 7:30 thing probably isn't going to exist.
What was the 7:30 thing?
Interview alternate candidate.
So we can do that.
Unless we can scare one up.
Let's make Mike the alternate candidate.
I don't think he'd accept.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
No,
right.
yeah.
Mike is stepping back.
I knew he had some time, yeah.
So we've got we have the accessory dwelling discussion from there.
That we have at 8, so if you want to put that first and then do this after.
No, but this is a good order.
This would be a great segue, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time and your help.
Okay, so
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you all.
and do we need hang on a second, we need a motion to basically
Yeah.
continue the hearing?
I move to accept the applicant's request for a continuance of the accessory dwelling public hearing until September 11th, 2014 at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all. Somebody's phone.
In the bottom.
Yeah, right. Could you send that picture to Laura, please?
It's public, it's available to me.
I know. Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the Form A for 182, 188 First Parish Road.
We should do away with that bylaw. It's been way too much time on accessory business.
Honest to God.
I think we just lower
Quite a variety of uses that accessory dwelling. So, I mean, it's got purpose.
I was kidding.
No, I'm it's really about what kind of latitude you really have with respect to what the balance is.
Well, I think we've gotten to this situation before about the intent. What were the original, the people that wrote, not only that bylaw, but other bylaws where we debated, what's the original intent?
Well, the thing that's compelling to me is
Sizing part.
Yeah, right. But you
got a color up there.
can see where it comes from.
Oh, okay.
Just
That's-
shows the original last.
Thanks.
somebody took it from that group.
That should just help clarify.
I don't think that was the intent of the letter. Is this a new one?
This one,
This is the color-coded one, right?
this is,
Okay.
This shows you how it says.
you thought surveying was just black and white.
I know where you are.
This gives a
They're
whole
all
new...
shades of gray.
This is the
Why don't you
old-
introduce
the old
yourself and tell us
greenhouse.
what you want to do?
Yep.
How you doing? My name's Jim DeSalle from DeSalle Burke and Associates out of Quincy, Mass. I'm here today to file an A&R subdivision that's in front of you. I know it's an odd-shaped lots, but it's the only way we could get these lots to fit and conform to zoning. The colored-up one I gave you is, there's two property owners. John Roman, who's here with us tonight, owns this horseshoe pork chop piece of land, about 50,000 square feet. And the Versoys, who've been around a long time, is a old antique shop and greenhouses, own about a 48,000 square foot lot here. I was originally hired to cut the Versoys piece up, but while we were doing the survey, John came out and, I guess, talked to Bethany, and we ended up, instead of doing the two here, getting the three plus John's house. There's a small resource area in the back. I have a botanist letter and determination. What it is, there's no wetlands on the site, but it's a drainage ditch that there's a wetland over on the other side of Kane, and then there's a wetland over here, so it becomes a resource area. But Patrick went out there and doesn't see a problem whatsoever with it. And as you see, John's house is on sewer. These are going to be on septic. The buildable areas are the lot 4 here, the lot 3 here, the lot 2 in this area here. Septics will be probably these two up front and in the back here, but we haven't done any testing yet.
And they all have appropriate frontage?
Yes, they all have the appropriate frontage. You get the 100 feet up to the buildable area, then it extends to 125.
I mean, along the road.
Excuse me?
Along the road, they have
Yeah, and
100
all
feet?
have 100 feet on all of it.
Why does this one say 93? Am I looking at it wrong?
Okay, on the red,
No, I'm looking at the blue numbers.
yeah, the blue is an old plan. There's plans back from the 50s by a guy named John Danver, and then Loring here, and none of them, they're all different. First Parish Road's a public variable width. He wrote, this guy Bamba here on this plan had 93 feet. We calculated out to be 97.5 when we did our survey.
95.7?
No, 95.7, sorry. There's two plans here that are 3-foot difference going up the common line of the Versoy Roman property.
And on the other plan, though, you also showed 98.2. Am I reading that right? There's so many different
There
pictures.
is. I've gone through this. There's 5 different surveys out there. And this is our survey. And this is the one we're stamping the survey. Going by. The reason why all the numbers are on the other plan is because there's deeds in plans that are referenced. And that was, and they're all a little bit different.
So I guess where we're coming from is, does the existing house end up with less than 100 foot of frontage?
No, it does not. It ends up with 9820 and 807 to the center line of the...
Okay, be to the center line of the
To the center line of
right-of-way
the way.
as part of that property.
And I have a,
Okay.
included in your package was a letter from an attorney
Okay.
stating that.
Which,
Okay.
looking at
We'll
the,
get onto that in a minute. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I'm sorry. The existing house, which of the property lines are changing?
This line here, and I actually took a 2-foot strip of the Versoy property and extended it that way.
Okay.
So you're,
2-foot strip so that 188 gets 100 feet of frontage?
Over
or
100 feet. They have 105, I think, now,
Does that include the
the 2-foot.
the right-of-way? Or
Yes.
it does include the
The
right-of-way?
98 is the 95.7 plus the couple of feet that we moved the lot line into the Versoys.
What about
Oh,
the
you're
fact that
confusing me.
the
Are we at
deed says-
98.2?
The deed says 93.
Well, oh, sorry, I didn't.
We're using way too many numbers
Yeah.
on the same thing.
Yeah.
What's driving what's the right number here? Is this 98.2 the right number?
98.2 is the new lot frontage on not using the right-of-way. Okay? Because we've taken part of the Versoy property. It's
Right.
95.7 plus additional land.
Right, to get to the
Okay,
98.2,
Yeah.
right?
They had to move that property line over.
Like where he's showing right
Yeah.
here.
And can I bring something up on that? When I spoke with Neil Duggan in the very beginning portion of this, he said to me that anything in this front section that we're not creating a new lot line on, and this was before we extended it, so literally anything from here forward was pre-existing non-conforming, if that was the case. When I came in and spoke with Mr. Vogel and Laura, they were saying, can we get the 100? And then between the title opinion and moving this lot line, we end up with 106, using the frontage along to the center line of the right-of-way.
Okay, so your arguments
Can I,
that you're taking,
When I get a chance,
Go ahead.
before I get all, like brought in, brought into your train of thought, my recollection was that if you are changing the lot lines on a piece of property, like you've got this 188, the 188 lot is there, it includes the backland all the way over, including this drainage ditch and the kind of area up to the stone wall. Those lot lines are changing. The lot's being divided in a way that it's really a different lot than it was. I have asked a number of people about this who practice planning professionally across the state, and they're all in agreement that when you change the lot lines, you lose the grandfathering.
And that was the question I had originally.
You're only, yeah, and I think, when we sat down in the office, I think you were there, and
Yep.
Mr. Roman was there, and I think Bethany Versoy was there. We talked about trying to make that frontage conforming.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing I knew, the decision was that you didn't have to do it, which, I wasn't sure, but I did look into it a little further, and it looks like, it's kind of logical that once you start changing a lot around, that, it's not the same lot, it's not a non-conforming lot because it's not the same lot anymore.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and the first question I had when we started this exercise, I spoke to Neil Duggan, because I called around and I was trying to figure out, first I called Sean McCarthy at engineering, I'm like, who's the enforcement officer? Who's the guy that makes the decision?
It is Neil.
And everyone pushed me towards Neil, and when Neil called me back, he told me exactly what I told you. The beginning part here is pre-existing non-conforming, it's only the new lines.
Okay,
And if
right.
he had said what you had said, we would have stopped right there. So I'm not speaking.
But-
Well, I
know what you're saying.
I don't know what to say. That's
But-
So
just
this lot line moved
a
too.
lot of,
But
The front lot
yeah.
line
the
moved
front
too.
line did move.
Yeah,
Yes, we moved it and made it larger.
right, so it must No, there must be no grandfather.
But we have over 100 feet,
So you don't need grandfather?
so we don't need it.
Well, except for the fact that this right-of-way, when you look at the deed for 188, it says it takes a measurement by the right-of-way.
Yep.
So that would mean alongside of the right-of-way. Now,
Did
I
you read
actually
this?
lived at one time adjacent to a private way where that derelict fee statute really was applicable.
Mm-hmm.
And with that wasn't taken into account for measuring setbacks or in any other way considered to be part of the property. So I think it's the same way here. I mean, unless you have a deed for that land, it's not really,
Did you read the title?
I did, but,
He's a lawyer, I don't know.
okay. I mean, I'm just saying, I think there are a number
Yeah, I don't
of
know what else we can,
sort of,
yeah.
pieces of this that maybe need a little more, little more support. But that's up to the board.
Well, I have to say I'm out of my element as far as that lawyer's letter goes, so I would need some support.
Well, I mean, we could have town council take a look at it, for instance, take a look at the
that might-
lawyer's letter.
So what about Neil Duggan's interpretation? He doesn't count?
Oh, I would never say that he doesn't count. I'm just saying, as far as the argument that this right-of-way should be included in the frontage.
That being aside, if I didn't touch this whole front section.
I want to see them.
then
Oh,
like
yeah,
Neil said,
good. I've
you
got
know,
one of those too,
I
don't
guess
I?
what the planning board, maybe the best
Sorry.
thing to do is to rely on the stamp that says that these houses on the zoning. It's just that the planning board is really supposed to
These are
approve the
close enough, so
frontage
there's no,
for these lots. The new frontage is something that's really
why
under their
couldn't you
purview.
just slide this puppy
So-
and pick up whatever you
Yeah,
need?
you
I
could-
think they're trying to make
Slide all
your
of them.
situation more conforming.
You can't.
It doesn't work,
It doesn't
huh?
work.
Okay,
I beat this thing,
okay.
Let me go back to,
because it seemed easy after we spoke, because it
Right.
looks like you have a ton of land over here. You don't get the 100 feet because this is coming in.
Yep.
Any thought to creating a common driveway in here, and then you can measure the lot width along the length of it? I mean, there probably are some ways you can
Yeah, you need the
play with this and
125.
get it to work.
But
If that's the key, then why couldn't you use this as
Slide.
frontage? If you're gonna,
It's not your frontage, it's for the lot width. That's the only thing you can use it for, that's.
Oh, to turn it
different
sideways, so
from
it's,
lot
so we're
width.
doing
Yeah, you
this?
can take it that way.
So you can, if I have a driveway up the middle, you're saying the lot width can go this way?
If you have a common driveway, yeah, I mean, you need a special permit for it, so there's a little more process to it, but that's, one thing that you might be able to do. But
Okay, I guess the
anyway,
question is,
I don't know if the board's gonna.
Well, I guess
push you
from
that
my
far.
point of view, I think I agree with Steve. It's like, it's out of my, I need to have like someone say that you can use the center line of the right of way, because I don't know. I'm not
Oh, yeah,
sure.
that was sent around to everyone.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we have it, it's
I
just,
just don't know, it's an
it's
interpretation.
only a
it's like
question
reading
of
Greek sometimes.
understanding it.
yeah, but it's also one lawyer's interpretation.
Well, there's actually, your lawyer said it the same thing, right?
I would just refer it to our town lawyer, and if he's on board, then
Yeah, then it's
fine.
fine. I mean, because it is, well, I guess close doesn't cut it, but it is very close.
I
you
know, I know.
It's not like
That
we're
makes it a
talking
little harder
50
to
to 100, it's like
argue, right.
98.
It's just either on or off, it's not near.
Yeah.
Go back to, you made a statement, something about measurements coming off of the right-of-way?
When you read the deed, it says, I don't have it right in front of me, but the measurement is by the right-of-way, from.
Does that have anything to do with the existing property line? Yeah, oh no, that's just another rendition of the same line.
The strange part about it is all the land in the back, this was all owned by Litchfield, I think it was owned by Litchfield.
But all the lands in the back go to the other side of the right of way, and the gentleman on the left side of Mr. Roman goes up to the point on the other side of the right of way, along a stone wall. So it's almost like Litchfield, I know exactly what you're saying, because I saw
Well,
it.
maybe the right-of-way was just owned by somebody else.
No, Litchfield owned the
Oh,
whole thing.
Litchfield owned it, okay,
It
well,
was just,
anyway.
it was just a weird way of doing it, but
So
like
the
I said,
measure-
that's why- I wasn't sure myself. That's why we.
Well, it says
contacted
the measurement is 93 feet by First Parish Road,
Yep.
and then northwesterly by a 16-foot wide right-of-way two courses totaling 174.39 feet. So it's, measuring along the right-of-way, 174 feet.
And if you look at the plan, that's what it shows.
Yeah.
But again,
So it doesn't seem real conclusive that, Mr. Roman owns that right-of-way.
that's what the attorney said. There's no proof that he does, but because of the statutes.
There's this thing called the derelict fee statute that says that you kind of own to the middle of the way, but I don't think it's the same as having title.
I understand what you're saying, but now, is town council the question?
Well, I don't want to get off onto a tangent because I don't know where the board's going.
Well, that would be I'd take that letter and say, I need somebody who's conversant in all this zoning stuff to look at it and say, yeah, I agree with that, or no, I don't,
Somebody that works for me.
Right.
What's the date trail for this thing? It's not tonight.
It came in, well, it probably
I
is.
think it's not, you're not going to meet the 21 days before the next meeting. I think,
You're
I
gonna
didn't
have to
stamp it in
withdraw
right
this
away
minute.
because we waited until we got the actual signature, so I think I stamped it on August 20th.
Yeah, it's August 20th, so 21 days would be on the 10th of September. So that's before your next meeting.
Yeah.
So you'd have to see if they could withdraw it and resubmit. But, they already paid the fee. I mean, it would just be a question of a new application, I think. It wouldn't be anything else.
But no fee.
Sorry?
They wouldn't have to pay a fee.
Well, it's up to you, but they did pay a fee already, and this
Yeah.
is kind of for your convenience unless you really want to get.
So what's the pleasure of the board?
Does town council have an opportunity to review this and come back to us with an opinion between now and our next meeting?
I think they can if you really get on them.
We is you.
Yeah. They've done things like that before.
Well,
But we still wouldn't have a chance to reconvene though, right?
Well, not prior to the next meeting.
Yeah.
So we would,
Maybe it
so,
would
I mean, I would say I would say the same thing. I'd say we refer to town council, get an opinion. If he's on board, then I think that's, in my view, that's really the only open issue.
It is.
who are we to say no at
well,
that point?
and I mean, I know you talked about like the common driveway. I think for this particular configuration, I'd almost rather, if it was going to be 4 lots, I'd rather not see a common driveway. I don't know. It just seems like that might kind of convolute things. And so if we could do it the right way to have the right frontage, I think is probably the better way, I guess, in my opinion.
The only thing you could say about a common driveway, and I don't know whether in favor or not, but that's a pretty tough stretch of First Parish going down the hill there and coming around the corner.
Yeah.
And the fewer curb cuts, that you could achieve this with, maybe you're better off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Particularly
They did
because
it on
First
the other
Parish
side of the
narrows as
street.
it comes down.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so I certainly want to have town council.
But, right, I mean, if town council says it's to the center of the right-of-way, then we have nothing else to say about it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just, it's been a long week. Now, let's say we don't get an answer back from him. Does what Mr. Duggan had to say mean anything or not?
I
I'm
think
sort of confused.
we will
that's all.
get an answer back from
From him?
Yeah.
Okay, because I wish I brought the.
And I don't think anyone's saying that, what Neil Duggan is.
No, I'm just trying to figure out which way we go with it, because it's.
And that's what town council's for, and Neil, I'm sure, would agree with that.
Well, put it, yeah.
He's not an attorney
If
either.
it goes to the center line, that's a legal opinion, then it's a.
Then it's a done deal.
It's a done deal.
You're home.
But even if he says, let's say he says it doesn't, in the interpretation from the zoning enforcement officer is X, is that something that makes sense to the board or no?
No, I would go with town council
That's a discussion that we.
No. That's two different questions.
Yeah.
That's two different questions.
No, you said it's suppose the town council said you can't apply it.
You can't apply it. But
Right.
what Mr. Duggan said was, we had no problem with the 93, at the time, we thought it was 93, going all the way back, because we weren't gonna change that lot line at all.
Yeah.
So, do we have two questions to ask the town council then?
Yeah, maybe that's the
I
case.
think-
Yeah, I think that's a very,
If
very
he
good
doesn't
point.
mess with the front lot line.
So you
can
wouldn't
still-
move
can he
it
be grandfathered?
2 feet?
Yeah, and that's, like I said,
You'd leave it where
I
it
wouldn't
is.
even
But he
start
has-
with this
but he has messed with
subdivision
the front.
Yeah,
if I
This
hadn't
plan,
had
this
that
plan here
answer from
has him
Mr.
messing with the
Dugan,
front.
that's
okay.
Yeah, but he's got to resubmit, right?
Yeah, I
You
think
can't
that's
extend
what
this?
Steve is saying. If he doesn't do anything
No,
with
no,
that
no,
front, with that front lot line, is it but he's doing stuff in the back, is it grandfathered?
But he's also doing something in the front.
But he
Well,
did,
no, I
change-
can,
Well,
no,
you
I
can change
can,
it back.
Something in the
I can change that back, that's
I think
not.
we
Yeah.
can work.
It's all
with
paper.
we get it,
I just need an answer, like,
Yeah.
if there's an answer, one way or another.
we get it.
I'm going out there tomorrow and look and see which one that is, that blue or the red.
Good idea.
Still find that
See
blue
what
line.
color paint they
In
use.
fact, I may even look at that
There's a
on the way
third
home.
color going in there.
God help us if it's orange.
I may look at that on the way home.
But yeah, no, I think we understand that.
So we have time to ask town council?
I think so. I mean, we can kind of stay in touch, and I don't think it would be beyond the next meeting, but if there's any kind of a delay, I'll let you know. And as
And
long as
I'll-
it's withdrawn, I know you're going to be resubmitting anyway, but we can stay in touch, so it's...
Yeah, that's fine. But all we have to do is just get the application signed again. Would you need another letter of the trustee or is Bethany's and
I
John's?
think the
okay?
letters that we have are fine.
Okay, so it's just the application I brought in originally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can just resubmit that, but I'll talk to you next week then.
We all set?
And this is the 10th, when we're at?
11.
The 11th.
No, but the 10th is when.
Yeah, that's
we've
when
got to get
your
an answer.
clock runs out, yeah.
The clock runs out.
Well, I think we're expecting that you're going to ask the planning board if you can withdraw the application.
Oh, okay, right now?
Yeah.
But what if the answer comes back positive?
Just refile the application.
Just
We'll do it on the 11th.
application. We'll just
Do it on the 11th?
do it again.
And
Oh,
then
okay.
vote, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's what you're saying, okay.
So I think we're going to ask you to just fill out a little letter that says planning board.
I don't think we solved any problems.
You know, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
We spent a
yeah.
lot of time.
We tried like hell.
I think we got, the other one had you mentioned in Arizona.
In the right direction. What I do is I come back and sit there and put a stove in, take a picture and sit there and say, look what I found.
And what- it's such
You
a-
gave him the opportunity.
I went there twice to,
It's a catch-22 though, because he was trying to do the right thing.
I
Yeah.
think I want like guided tours of all these accessory dwelling applications from now on. I mean, probably get all kinds of decorating ideas.
We have to write decorating.
do we
the
have
bylaws.
any other thing, anything else we need to do?
We have to go and get the vote on that.
Just
We need
just
it-
vote on
Yes,
this.
have your motion.
And can we take this?
What are we voting on?
His request to
Acceptance
withdraw the
request.
Form A.
Okay.
Thanks, okay, and I've got your phone number and all of
Yep.
that, so. Okay,
Emails and all that.
so, there you go, just, you know.
I move that we accept the the application withdrawal for the Form A on 182, 180-188 First Parish Road, in Scituate, Massachusetts, without prejudice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Having nothing else on the agenda, I need a second for Bob.
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.